Timeless Assassin. Author. Raj_Shah_7152. Chapter 51-75. Leo's Paw, Student Dorm Room 22C. Leo felt a sharp, excruciating pain pulsing through his palm the moment Su-Yong left, but he refused to acknowledge it until he was safely behind the closed door of his dorm. Click. The second the door locked behind him, he let out a sharp breath, shaking his hand violently to restore blood flow. Motherfucker, he hissed under his breath, flexing his fingers as pins and needles of pain shot through them. Fucker did this on purpose. Leo cursed, as his palm throbbed with a dull, aching burn, bruises already forming where Su-Yang's monstrous grip had crushed his capillaries. Clenching his jaw, he bit into the side of his palm and blew hot air over the skin to dull the lingering pain. What the fuck was all that about? Su-Yong had come to his dorm out of nowhere, dragging an entire entourage of students behind him like some self-proclaimed emperor making an unannounced visit to a rival kingdom. And for what? A ridiculous intimidation stunt. A childish attempt at establishing dominance. Leo exhaled sharply, his annoyance only deepening. Bastard exposed my face to a crowd. Soon, I won't be able to walk the halls without drawing attention. That thought alone pissed him off. But beyond his irritation, Leo had to acknowledge an undeniable truth: Su-Yong was strong. Too strong. He had already known Su-Yong was a monarch-level talent, thanks to the assistant's briefing in the genetic testing chamber, but until now, that was just information. Feeling the difference firsthand was something else entirely, and Leo was shocked at just how massive the gap in their raw physical strength really was. It wasn't like he had not fought stronger opponents before. He did face a few in the entrance tests, however, those were manageable. This was on another level entirely. The sheer difference in physical power between them was absurd. And the worst part, Su-Yong knew it. The way he had applied pressure wasn't reckless, it was controlled. Calculated. A deliberate show of power. That bastard. Leo exhaled, shaking his hand one last time now that some feeling had returned to his fingers. What the hell does he mean by, "see you around"? He muttered, scowling. I'm not fraternizing with the likes of him. Not a chance in hell. Today's encounter had told him everything he needed to know about Su-Yong. He was flamboyant, arrogant, egotistical. But beneath all that bravado, he was calculated, dangerous. Su-Yong understood people. He knew how to provoke them, how to control a crowd, how to instill dominance with nothing more than a few words and a well-timed smirk. He wasn't just strong. He was aware of how people perceived him. Aware of how to weaponize that perception to his advantage. He was disciplined. He was strategic. He was a nightmare in human form. That's what makes him dangerous. Su-Yang's arrogance wasn't empty. His confidence wasn't baseless. And if things continued the way they were, there was no doubt in Leo's mind that Su-Yong was the easy favorite to dominate this year's rankings. Leo sighed, rolling his shoulders. Yeah, I don't care if you're number 1 or number 100. Just stay out of my way, you crazy bastard. He flexed his bruised fingers, his expression hardening. Because next time you try something like that, I'm coming for your neck. He might have played it stoic today, but he wouldn't let Su-Yong treat him like an easy target. Bullies didn't stop after one show of dominance. If he let this slide, then academy life was going to be hell. And Leo had no intention of spending the next few years bowing his head. Eventually, Leo ventured out of his dorm room later in the evening to check out the ranking board and the class schedule. His decision to wait had been the right one, as by the time he arrived, the crowd had thinned significantly. Only a handful of students remained, some standing silently as they read their results, while others muttered in despair, unable to accept that they had failed to make the cut for the elite class. My life is over. I have shamed my clan. What does this mean for me? Should I just end it all now? If I kill a student in the elite class, will it open a slot for me? Leo ignored the hushed conversations around him, his focus locked on the board. Rodova Military Academy, elite class rankings. First place, Leo Skyshard, Monarch level talent 95 points. Second place, Su-Yong, Monarch level talent 94.5 points. 3rd place, Mu Shen, Transcendent level talent 87 points. 4th place, Ru Lan, Transcendent level talent 85 points. 5th place, Ji Yu Feng, Transcendent level talent 82 points. Leo's gaze lingered on the list, his eyes narrowing slightly. So, I really did rank first. He had suspected as much after Su Yang's sudden interest in him earlier, but seeing it confirmed in writing was something else entirely. He hadn't expected to outscore someone like Su Yang, especially not in a setting like this. However, the half-point difference told him everything he needed to know about Su Yang versus his strengths. He wasn't stronger than Su Yang. He wasn't faster. He wasn't more physically dominant. But he was sharper. The reflex test had tipped the scales in his favor, giving him just enough of an edge to surpass Su Yang, even if only by the slimmest margin. Still, a part of him wondered if this ranking was a blessing or a curse. Being ranked first meant more eyes were going to be on him all year long, which would in turn mean more scrutiny and more challenges for him. Sigh. Leo exhaled sharply, pushing the thought aside as he shifted his attention to the class schedule displayed beside the rankings. Elite Class Timetable, Year 1. Common Courses. 1. Basics of Perception, Professor Powell. 2. Physical Fitness and Training, Professor Marvin. 3. General Magic Theory, Professor David. Professional Specialization, Assassin Branch. 4. Basics of Stealth and Assassination. 5. Scouting, Movement and Planning. 6. Practical Combat. Leo's eyes moved over the list, analyzing the course structure. 3 foundational courses that all elite class students, regardless of profession, had to take. Then, 3 specialization courses, tailored specifically for his branch. No unnecessary fluff. No wasted time. Everything was designed with direct application to their profession. As he skimmed through the timetables of other branches, he noted the differences. The swordsmanship branch, for example, had basics of swordsmanship and sword intent, instead of stealth. They also had leadership and battlefield tactics, as a secondary subject, instead of scouting, movement, and planning. Meanwhile, practical combat remained a common course, no matter the profession. It all made sense. Rodova was shaping them into specialists. Professor notes, Year 1 Elite Class. As Leo's eyes drifted lower, he noticed handwritten notes beneath each course description. Basics of Perception, Professor Powell. Greater than, you think you know how to see. Ha ha ha, we'll see if you can see in my class. Open your eyes, or you'll walk into a blade before you ever see it coming. Class held daily except Thursdays and Sundays. Practical Training Ground D4. Leo's brow twitched slightly. Who the hell wrote that? This Powell guy sounded completely unhinged and like an individual who liked to make dad jokes. Physical Fitness and Training, Professor Marvin. Greater than, I don't care how strong you think you are. If you can't outrun, outlast, and overpower the enemy, you're already dead. In my class, you either adapt or collapse. Simple. Class held daily at dawn. Training Hall C2. Leo let out a slow breath. Professor Marvin sounded like a hard ass. He was no stranger to physical training, but something about Marvin's tone told him that this class would be hell. General Magic Theory, Professor David. Greater than, magic is a tool. A weapon. A science. If you think it's some mystical nonsense or a shortcut to power, you're already a fool. I will make sure only those worthy of wielding it pass my class. Class held daily except Saturdays and Sundays. Lecture Hall B-1. Leo's lips curled slightly. An indoor subject. And something that actually sounded interesting. He almost couldn't believe his luck. Then came the profession-specific courses. Basics of Stealth and Assassination. Greater than, the difference between a common thug and an assassin. One gets caught. The other doesn't. You'll either learn the difference, or you'll fail before you ever begin. Class held on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Stealth Training Facility A6. Scouting, Movement and Planning. Greater than, no mission is won on strength alone. Your ability to move, observe, and plan is what separates the dead from the living. Make no mistake, you'll learn the art of survival before you ever learn to kill. Class held on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Tactical Field B9. Practical Combat. Greater than, if you hesitate, you die. If you lack control, you die. If you overestimate yourself, you die. Get used to hearing that. My job is to make sure you're worth keeping alive. Class held daily. Combat Arena E3. Leo noted that the last 3 courses didn't list a specific professor. Did that mean they had multiple instructors? Or was it too dangerous to list a name? Whatever the case, none of these notes sounded comforting. It was almost like Rodova wasn't here to teach them. It was here to break them and to forge them. There were no easy courses. No approachable instructors. Only killers in the making. Leo exhaled slowly, stepping away from the board. Tomorrow, it would all begin, and he had no intention of falling behind from day one. Leo's POV, Rodova Military Academy, Training Hall C2, early morning. Leo barely had any time to settle into his new routine before the first day of training hit him like a freight train. The academy operated on a brutal schedule, and the dorm alarms blared at exactly 4:30 a.m., signaling the start of the day with zero mercy. Leo had barely managed to drag himself out of bed, throw on his training uniform, and make his way outside before being herded toward Training Hall C2, where the first class of every morning, physical fitness and training, was held. Now, standing in the massive hall, he observed the ruthlessly efficient setup. The space was vast, with rows of heavy-duty training equipment, climbing ropes, weighted dummies, and obstacle courses that looked like they belonged in a military boot camp rather than an academy. The walls were lined with racks of weighted vests, stacks of iron plates, and resistance bands that looked like they were meant for dragons, not humans. A few students muttered as they took in the setup. Are we training or getting sent to war? I heard the instructor is brutal. Yeah, Professor Marvin, right. The guy's ex-military. Used to train actual soldiers before he came here. Leo ignored the chatter, his eyes scanning the students around him. Some looked sleepy. Others looked pumped. And then there were the rare few, like Su Yong, who stood there utterly unfazed, as if this was just another morning routine. So this is the elite class, Leo thought, as looking around, he could see how everyone around him looked exceptional in one way or another. Everyone carried themselves with an air of dignity. Nobody made unnecessary gestures or trouble, and mostly everyone was courteous and reserved. About 90% of the crowd was high-born, while the remaining few were too shy to make eye contact with others. What a boring class, Leo thought, rolling his shoulders, as he felt the slight soreness in his joint because of his encounter with Su Yong yesterday. Then, slam! The heavy steel doors at the front of the hall burst open, and a man who looked like he had been carved from stone stepped inside. Is that Professor Marvin? Leo wondered, as the man walked closer. The man was a towering wall of muscle, his sleeveless training uniform revealing thick, battle-worn arms covered in scars. His expression was one of pure, unfiltered authority, and the sheer weight of his presence made the room feel smaller. The students immediately straightened when the man's gaze swept over them, as nobody seemed to be wanting to mess with him. Then, in a deep, no-nonsense voice, he spoke. Welcome to Physical Fitness and Training. I'm Marvin Gallows, but you will call me Professor Marvin. His tone held no warmth. No welcome. Just raw, military discipline. I don't care who you are. I don't care what clan you're from. I don't care if you're a monarch-level talent or some gutter rat who barely crawled their way into the elite class. He folded his arms, his gaze sharp as a blade. In this hall, you are all the same. He said, as he narrowed his eyes on Su Yong. I don't care how strong you think you are. If you can't outrun, outlast, and overpower the enemy, you're already dead. A few students shifted uncomfortably. Marvin's lips curled slightly as if he could smell their doubt. Most of you have never felt what it means to be truly exhausted. To have every ounce of strength drained from your body, yet still be expected to keep going, which is why most of you don't understand the importance of physical training and conditioning. He said, as his voice softened just a tad bit. I'll tell you this just once, so listen carefully. If you're an assassin, you will face situations where you must cross a vast distance in a matter of seconds. Whether it's closing in on a target before they escape or outrunning an entire battalion of pursuers, your ability to move will determine whether you live or die. His icy gaze swept over the nervous students. The day your legs give out before your will to survive does, you die. A tense hush fell over the training hall. Marvin's voice lowered slightly, but the weight of his words only grew heavier. If you're a swordsman, picture this: your unit is laying siege on a fortress perched atop a hill. The only opening is a narrow, 5-minute window at dawn, when the night patrols rotate out, and the morning fog is at its thickest. He paused, letting the image sink in. In that brief moment, you must scale the cliffside, breach the walls, and eliminate the gate sentries, all before the changing guards notice something is wrong. His piercing stare hardened. But what if you're too slow? What if you're not strong enough to carry your gear up that hill? What if your endurance fails before you reach the top? A suffocating silence. Then you die. And with you, your entire unit dies. Marvin let the words hang, allowing them to settle into the bones of every student present. Then, his gaze shifted. And archers. Some students instinctively straightened. Marvin's lips curled slightly. You think distance keeps you safe. That standing on a vantage point means you're untouchable. He snorted. Let me tell you how an archer dies. He raised a hand, mimicking the pull of a bowstring. You've climbed a high perch, a ridge, a tower, a tree. You take position, your arrows nocked, and your sight is locked onto the battlefield below. Marvin snapped his fingers. The first few shots fly true. Your enemies fall. You think of yourself as a hunter above the chaos. Then, his expression darkened. But then, they find you. He took a slow step forward. They scale the ridge. They breach the tower. They set the forest alight beneath your perch. Marvin's voice dropped to a cold whisper. You reach for another arrow, but your fingers are trembling. Your breath is ragged. Your arms are too weak to draw the bowstring again, because after hours of battle, you're exhausted. Another pause. And the moment you hesitate, you die. His words struck like hammer blows. The difference between a sniper and a corpse. Stamina. Strength. The ability to keep shooting when the body screams to stop. His eyes swept over the room, landing on each student, branding his lesson into them. No matter your profession, if your body fails you before the battle is over, then you were never fit to fight in the first place. A heavy silence followed. Marvin exhaled, rolling his shoulders. This is why we train. Then, his voice snapped back to full command mode. Now, prepare for training, and remember, if you don't train till you feel like you will die, someday you will die for real. Today, we start with something light. We start with 25 kilograms weighted vest runs, followed by simple exercise runs. Grab a vest and get in line, Marvin instructed, as no one hesitated for even a second longer. Everyone swarmed to pick up a vest. However, when it was Leo's turn to pick up a vest, Marvin suddenly interrupted. Not you, Skyshard, you, Su Yang, Mu Shen, the three of you are at the top of the rankings, so you will start with a 40 kilograms vest. Since the three of you want to parade as the best, you must also behave like the best, Professor Marvin said, as Leo looked at him in confusion. Why did he already know his name? And since when did he parade like the best? What nonsense was this? The moment Professor Marvin singled Leo out for the heavier vest, the whispers began. This guy. This kid is Leo Skyshard, the #1 ranked genius. Oh man, I thought the top students were gonna get it easy, but Professor Marvin is laying into them on day 1. I mean, it's only fair. If they only had 25 kilograms, they'd finish while we're barely at the halfway mark. I wanna be friends with Leo Skyshard. They say being around the right kind of people sparks growth. As Leo heard the murmurs around him, he exhaled sharply through his nose, his frown deepening. His anonymity was gone. Before today, he was just another face in the crowd, one of many new students blending into the academy's brutal ranks. But now, everyone in the elite class knew his name, his face, and exactly where he stood on the rankings as a dozen new gazes bore into his back. He hated it. He hated being the center of attention, however, for now he had no choice but to weather it. Then, a sudden bump against his shoulder snapped him out of his thoughts. "You hesitate too much, Skyshard." Su Yang's voice was casual, almost bored, as he brushed past Leo and grabbed a 40 kilograms vest. With ease, he slid it over his shoulders and fastened the straps, rolling his shoulders like it weighed nothing. "It's just 40 kilos, he said with a smirk, staring Marvin down like this was just another day for him. Then, he grinned. "Yeah, I'm the best around here. And I'm not afraid to show it." Su Yang yelled, as a ripple went through the crowd at his bold declaration, but Marvin only chuckled, unimpressed. Meanwhile, Mu Shen, the number 3 ranked student, let out an exaggerated groan. "Man, what a drag," he muttered, dragging a hand through his disheveled hair. "I'm not even a monarch-level talent, why do I have to do the heavy load too?" Despite his complaints, he still grabbed a 40 kilograms vest and strapped it on, his expression making it clear that despite his protests he did not find the vest to be too heavy either. Leaving only Leo behind, Leo stared at the vest, his fingers tightening around the fabric as he lifted it. Heavy, heavy, heavy. At 72 kilograms himself, adding another 40 kilograms onto his frame was no small thing. It was nearly an extra half of his body weight, as even before he buckled it in place, he could feel the weight dragging against his arms, pressing down onto his shoulders, testing his balance. This is going to be hell, Leo realized the moment he put it on. However, there was no turning back now. Securing the straps, Leo adjusted the vest so it fit snugly against his torso. However, the instant he let go, his knees almost buckled. The weight pulled at his body, demanding he sink lower, demanding he acknowledge how unnatural this burden was. However, he did not. Instead, he clenched his jaw, straightened his back, and refused to give Marvin or anyone else the satisfaction of seeing him struggle. Then, "All right," Marvin barked, stepping forward. "No more stalling. Line up." A single command, and the students fell into position, aligning into rows behind a set of marked lanes in the training hall. Marvin pointed to the far end of the massive indoor track. 100 laps, he said. "If you stop before you finish, you repeat the entire training session tomorrow." A collective murmur of horror rippled through the students. Marvin smirked. "Move." The moment they took off, Leo knew he was in trouble. The added weight dragged against every step, slowing his movements, straining his muscles, making him feel like he was running through wet cement. Each breath came heavier. Each stride felt unnatural, as it became clear to him that his body wasn't used to this. As he completed the first lap, every fiber of his being screamed that this wasn't normal, that he should stop, that he should slow down. But he did not. He could not. Because just a few paces ahead of him, Su Yang ran effortlessly, his golden eyes gleaming with amusement as if he wasn't carrying anything extra at all. Because Mu Shen, despite his constant complaints, was keeping up just fine, his pace relaxed, his breathing controlled. And most importantly, because Leo refused to fall behind. Pride alone kept his feet moving. His body screamed. His legs threatened to collapse beneath him. But he refused. His pride would not allow him to be the one struggling at the back while Su Yang ran ahead, smiling like the goddamn show-off he was. So Leo grit his teeth. And he ran. He ran as hard as he could, for as far as he could, and continued to run even after his vision started to double and his lungs started to hurt. 25 laps in Skyshard, how are you holding? Do you think we should increase our pace a little? Doesn't this feel too leisurely? Su Yang asked teasingly, as Leo felt his blood boil over. If he was at peak condition, he would have smacked Su Yang in the face at this moment, however, he was not. He did not even have spare energy to sock him in the face, and hence he continued to remain silent, consistent with his character. Mu Shen, you know, this guy's a mute, he doesn't speak even if you're chopping his dick off. A real hardcore assassin, Su Yang joked, as he glanced towards Mu Shen, who was also running beside them at the head of the pack. Man, don't drag me into your internal squabbles, unlike you monsters, I'm struggling here to keep up with your pace. If you increase it any more, I'm falling behind for sure, Mu Shen replied, as he refused to play Su Yang's game. However, Su Yang only smirked in response. You're not struggling, Mu Shen, Leo here is. Look at his legs, they're vibrating violently, while he's wheezing through his mouth like a drowning seal. A couple more laps and he won't be at the head of the pack here with us, Su Yang said, as it was only when he drew attention to Leo's movements that Mu Shen noticed just how hard Leo was really struggling. His legs vibrated due to muscle fatigue with every step that he took and his lungs seemed to be desperately gasping for oxygen. Oh yeah, no shit, bro's turning blue. Looks like endurance is not your strong suit, bro. Better sit this one out and try again tomorrow with no extra weights, Mu Shen said, as suddenly the respect that he seemed to carry for Leo before this sentence seemed to vanish, as he no longer seemed to fear him as before. He's not the only one, half the crowd who have not been trained for endurance back in their clans have started to slow down. A lap here is 600 meters, and after running for 15 kilometers at near sprinting speeds, most are already at their limits. 100 laps here is very harsh for the untrained, however, 100 laps with extra weights is pure hell, Su Yang said, as just as he pointed this out, the first student burnt out and crashed, stumbling onto the mud below as his knees gave out completely. However, while Su Yang said these words hoping to demoralize Leo, his words strangely motivated Leo instead. Wait, I've been running for 15 kilometers straight already. That doesn't seem right, it's been only 20 minutes. How did I manage to run 15 kilometers in 20 minutes? That too with a vest on. Leo wondered, as something about this situation did not add up in his brain. Although he had lost his memories and did not know the limits of his own strength, he did remember just how long a kilometer was supposed to be, and understood that under normal circumstances, walking leisurely would take 15 to 20 minutes to cover a kilometer. Yet, in just 20 minutes, he had covered 15 kilometers. That wasn't human. That was wolf-like speed, except he wasn't slowing down. He wasn't collapsing. He was still moving. My body. Is it already this strong? Yes, I'm tired, but I'm not dead yet. Meaning I must have trained as hell to be what I am today, Leo realized, as his belief in his own strength suddenly skyrocketed. He was told that he was the best assassin on Earth, but he did not know anything more about himself. However, running today, he finally got a feel for his limits, and the real power coursing through his veins. He was not an average human. He was already way past that limit already. Once Leo realized that he wasn't as weak as he had assumed, his breathing began to stabilize, and his heart rate gradually eased. It was strange, how a psychological shift could have such a tangible effect on his body, as the difference between forcing himself to endure through sheer willpower and knowing, deep in his bones, that he could endure was staggering. His muscles were still burning. His lungs still strained for air. His legs still felt the weight of the vest pressing down on them with every step. But suddenly, it felt manageable. The despair that had been creeping in, the idea that he was barely hanging on while Su Yang ran circles around him, was gone. Because now, he knew. He was fast. He was strong. He was built for this. And that made all the difference. As he pushed forward, his strides evened out, and his pace became smoother. Meanwhile, Su Yang, who had been casually observing Leo's struggle from the corner of his eye, narrowed his gaze slightly. The shift was subtle, but he noticed it instantly. Leo had gone from running on the edge of collapse to finding his rhythm. Su Yang had never seen anything like that happen before, so he was baffled to see Leo find a second wind so late into the run. It was fascinating to watch. Well, Su Yang muttered under his breath, lips curving upward. So you do have some iron in you, Skyshard. Rather than feeling threatened, Su Yang felt excited. He had been waiting for Leo to stop enduring and start owning it. Now, it was time to see how far he could push him. Hey, Skyshard, Su Yang called out, his tone light, teasing. You're looking a little too comfortable back there. What do you say we pick up the pace? He said, as without waiting for a reply, Su Yang accelerated. Leo, caught slightly off guard by Su Yang's sudden burst of speed, instinctively matched him. His legs burned, his breath came harder, but his pride refused to let Su Yang leave him behind. They shot past Mu Shen, who let out an exaggerated groan. "Of course you two psychos would do this," he grumbled. "Just kill me already and get it over with." But neither Leo nor Su Yang paid him any mind. The other students, still struggling through their laps, could only watch as the two front runners began pulling away from the pack. "Look at them go. They were already ahead of the rest of us, and now they're treating this like a damn race. Monarch-level talents really are built different, huh?" Marvin, observing from the sidelines, let out a quiet chuckle. Good. He had expected Su Yang to do well. But Leo's performance surprised him. According to the data slate that he had, it seemed like Leo's strength and endurance was average at best. And with him wearing a 40 kilograms vest instead of 25, Marvin expected him to collapse amongst the first few students who gave out. However, Leo resiliently held on. Despite hitting his muscle capacity, Leo kept running on pure adrenaline and willpower, as he pulled ahead of the pack alongside Su Yang, and managed to lap them all around lap 40. By now, around 50% of the class had already given out. On their very first day, they did not have the mettle to keep running at near top speeds for over 25 kilometers, especially with a weighted vest on. However, despite hitting his limits long ago, Leo kept running non-stop, never falling a step behind Su Yang, until they hit lap number 50. As they hit lap 50, Su Yang finally felt the strain of running for 30 kilometers catch up to him, as his breathing became more ragged and his decision to run faster and break his initial rhythm came back to bite him in the ass. "Say, what, Sky, Shard, are you feeling it yet?" he said, his voice coming out in rasps, as he looked across towards Leo who kept running with a simple smile on his face. "Oh, come on now, say something," Su Yang urged, as he forcefully took a step ahead of Leo and glanced at his face. However, what he saw made him stumble in fear, as he lost his balance and hit the ground below with a sickening slide and thud. The impact sent shockwaves through Su Yang's body, but he barely felt it. His mind was still reeling from what he had just witnessed. His chest heaved as he scrambled up onto his elbows, eyes locked onto Leo, who continued running as if nothing had happened. But it wasn't normal. It wasn't human. "Professor." Su Yang's voice came out hoarse, cracking slightly as he turned to Marvin. His face was ghastly pale, his breaths coming in short gasps as he struggled to put what he saw into words. Marvin, who had been observing from the sidelines, raised an eyebrow. "If you're gonna ask me to let you join the sprint again, Yang, you can forget about it. You can finish it, but you're still running the penalty tomorrow." "It's not." Su Yang gritted his teeth, forcing himself to his feet despite his trembling legs. He pointed at Leo, his golden eyes wide, almost disbelieving. "It's not about me. Look at him." Marvin's gaze flicked toward Leo, and what he saw made his expression darken. Blood ran down Leo's nose in thick, crimson trails, staining his chin and dripping onto his vest. More blood had seeped from the corners of his mouth, trailing down his jawline in messy streaks. But it wasn't just that. His face, his expression, was wrong. A bloody smile curled at his lips, stretching far too easily despite the signs of physical agony his body should have been experiencing. And then, there were his eyes. Or rather, the lack of them. His pupils had completely disappeared, leaving behind nothing but rolled back, ghostly white eyes that stared into the abyss. He wasn't conscious. That much was obvious. But somehow, impossibly, he was still running. A fresh shiver crawled up Su Yang's spine as he clenched his fists. He had never seen anything like this before. "Professor," he breathed, his voice lower now, carrying the weight of something close to horror. "He's not awake, but he's still running." Marvin's frown deepened. Leo's form was still perfect, his strides still fluid, his balance unwavering. But there was no recognition in his movements. No control. As if his body had simply refused to stop. Marvin cursed under his breath, his instincts kicking in. Skyshard. He barked. No response. Leo's legs kept moving, his breath ragged but steady, his body acting purely on something beyond awareness. Skyshard. Marvin shouted again, louder this time, his voice carrying authority. But there was no response again. Shit, Marvin muttered, as he moved in quickly to stop Leo from harming himself anymore. This wasn't him passing out from just exhaustion. This wasn't him still running from just determination. This was something else. Su Yong wiped the sweat from his forehead, his hands still trembling slightly. He parted his lips as if to say something, but swallowed it down instantly. For the first time since stepping foot into Rodova, he felt it. Something beyond competition. Something beyond talent. Something unnatural. As for the first time in his life, he developed genuine feelings of respect for a colleague. What the hell is wrong with this guy? He said, his eyes wide, as no matter how much he searched within himself, he could not think of a scenario where he would continue running even after he had passed out. Not even if his life were on the line. Marvin rushed forward the moment he realized what was happening. Leo's body kept moving, his legs still driving forward despite the unmistakable signs of unconsciousness. "Stop, boy, you'll end up killing yourself if you don't," Marvin said, as without hesitation he caught him by the shoulders, and lifted him clean off the ground. But even as Marvin lifted Leo's body into the air, Leo still continued to thrash and struggle against the restraint, his muscles twitching, his limbs jerking as if searching for solid ground. His legs kicked weakly, desperate to keep running, despite the fact that his mind had already long since shut down. Marvin frowned, staring into the eerie, rolled back whites of Leo's eyes, searching for some flicker of awareness. However, there was nothing to be found. Leo was gone. And yet, his body refused to stop. What monstrous willpower, what kind of training turns a boy into this? Marvin wondered, feeling impressed as he exhaled sharply through his nose. Shifting his grip, he brought Leo's thrashing form into a tight hold, locking his arms against his sides, forcing him still. It was only then, when all movement had been forcibly cut off, that Leo's body finally stopped resisting, going slack against Marvin's unyielding frame. As finally, he stopped for good. For a moment, the training field was deathly silent. And then, as if reality had just sunk in, the whispers began. "What the fuck did we just witness?" He was smiling, the whole time, while he was running, while he was bleeding, he was smiling. No, that's not even the worst part is that he was unconscious. He didn't even know he was smiling. He didn't choose to keep going. His body just kept running and smiling, even when his mind was gone. The words settled over the group of students still running like a suffocating weight. "I want to believe he would have stopped eventually. I have to believe that. But, if the professor hadn't stopped him, if Marvin hadn't physically restrained him." He hesitated, as if speaking the thought aloud would make it real. Would he have just kept going? Would he have run until his body actually broke? The question sent chills racing down spines of the students who sat just outside the running track. "I thought I knew what it meant to push past my limits. I thought I understood what willpower was," a girl from the 6 big clans said, as she turned her gaze towards Leo's limp form. "But that wasn't willpower. That was something else. Something inhuman." Silence. Then, "Fuck, I was planning to challenge him after this," someone said with a dry humorless laugh. "Now, I don't even think I want to be on the same battlefield as that freak," he concluded, as he rubbed his hands over his skin that had turned reptilian with goosebumps. "This guy, he's not normal. He's not normal. No one should be able to do that. No one should be able to keep running when their body gives out. It's not just talent or training, it's like he doesn't know how to stop. What kind of life do you have to live, to become something like that?" Mu Shen asked, his gaze flickering toward Leo's motionless form. "Number," he corrected himself, shaking his head. "What kind of person do you have to be? What the hell has he gone through to become this?" The thought settled uneasily in everyone's minds. All of them had worked hard to get where they were today. None of them had easy lives growing up. However, whatever hell they had been through, now looked like a children's park when compared to the past of Leo Skyshard. Rodova Military Academy, the Sea Wing Infirmary. Professor Marvin personally rushed Leo into the infirmary once his thrashing stopped, as he felt Leo's pulse weaken slightly with every passing second. The infirmary was relatively quiet, with only a handful of minor cases being treated, scrapes, bruises, and the occasional muscle strain. Since the semester had just begun, there weren't many serious injuries yet, leaving the medical staff free to prepare for what would inevitably come. So when Professor Marvin stormed in, carrying Leo's limp body over his shoulder, the room instantly snapped to attention. Half a dozen assistants and a senior healer, a composed yet authoritative woman with streaks of silver in her dark hair, rushed toward him, their eyes widening when they saw the state Leo was in. "Place him here," the senior healer instructed, motioning toward one of the reinforced medical tables, as Marvin did as told, carefully lowering Leo onto the padded surface. "What happened to him?" the senior healer asked, as Marvin quickly briefed them about how Leo kept running despite passing out, pushing his body well beyond its limits. Having a general idea of what went down, the assistants immediately went to work, their hands glowing with diagnostic mana as they began a rapid assessment. However, within seconds, their faces turned grim. "Muscle fibers across his legs and arms are torn," one of them reported, voice laced with disbelief. "Multiple stress fractures in his tibia, fibula, and metatarsals," another chimed in. "Mana exhaustion detected, his reserves are completely drained." But the worst was yet to come. The senior healer, standing at Leo's bedside, placed her hand just above his chest, her mana pulsing in waves as she conducted a deeper scan. A second later, her eyes flickered with something close to shock. "There's a small perforation in his left lung," she said, her usually calm voice carrying a rare note of incredulity. "Likely caused by extreme exertion under prolonged oxygen deprivation." One of the assistants swallowed hard. That doesn't make sense. That kind of injury occurs in high-intensity combat, not from running." The senior healer pulled back, exhaling sharply as she studied Leo's unconscious form. His face was still pale, lips slightly parted as his body lay eerily still, completely drained of all its strength. But even now, despite the damage, his fingers twitched, as if his body was still trying to move. "This level of self-destruction," the senior healer muttered under her breath. "How can one even do this to themselves?" Professor Marvin crossed his arms, his sharp gaze fixed on Leo. He had seen many students over the years, many elite warriors in the making, but none who had done this much damage to themselves without being in an actual fight. He let out a low grunt. "Forget the how. Can you fix him?" The senior healer nodded, but there was hesitation in her eyes. "Yes. His injuries are severe, but they can be healed completely within a few hours with proper treatment. I will try and ensure that he doesn't miss his next class due in 2.5 hours, but he's going to miss breakfast for sure," she concluded, as Marvin's lips curled slightly, though there was no humor in his expression. "All right, fix him, and once he wakes up inform him that he has failed my training class and needs to redo the 100 laps tomorrow," Marvin instructed, as with that he left the infirmary hall. Shaking her head, as if disappointed in the muscle-headed professor, the chief healer prepared a serum, while also giving instructions to her assistants. "Prepare the mana regeneration solution. He needs deep tissue healing and a full detoxification cycle. Tasha, cast a healing spell over his lungs, the hole is small, you can fill it quickly. Darren, pump out the leaked blood, unclog the smaller arteries. Heldy, heal his fractured bones. Chop, chop. The next class is in 2.5 hours. The chief healer instructed, as the whole team worked on Leo's body double speed. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Leo's paw, Sea Wing Infirmary. Leo stirred, his senses slowly dragging themselves back into focus. Everything hurt. His limbs felt like dead weights, his muscles screamed in protest with even the slightest shift, and his head throbbed with a dull, pounding ache. It was like waking up from the worst beating of his life, except he couldn't remember when he'd even taken a hit. Gasp! A deep breath sent a sharp, uncomfortable pressure through his chest. Not pain, but tightness, like his lungs were still adjusting to working properly again. What the hell happened? He wondered, as his last memory was one of running on the track, his legs burning, his breath coming shorter, and the world slowly darkening with each lap. Darkness. That was all he remembered. It had crept in at the edges of his vision, spreading with every step until what? His brows furrowed slightly as he stared at the white ceiling above him. He didn't remember collapsing. Didn't remember stopping. All he knew was that one moment he was running, and the next, he was here. You're awake. A calm, authoritative voice cut through his thoughts, and Leo turned his head slightly to see a mature woman standing at his bedside. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, tied into a neat bun, and her sharp, assessing eyes swept over him with clinical precision. You gave us quite the trouble, young man, she said, setting a small vial down on the bedside table. Not many students manage to land themselves in the infirmary on the first day, at least, not from running. Leo blinked, his throat dry as he finally registered his surroundings. This was the Sea Wing Infirmary. He had seen it during the orientation from the outside. How long was I out? He asked, his voice coming out rough, probably because he hadn't spoken in hours. A little over 2 hours. The healer responded, looking at the clock, as Leo exhaled sharply to her response. This wasn't ideal. Being out for 2 hours meant that he missed most of what else happened in the morning training class, and missed his chance to grab breakfast. You need to get moving if you don't want to miss your next class. The healer warned, as reaching for the vial she had placed on the table beside him earlier, she pressed the glass into his hand. Drink this throughout the day. Small sips, not all at once. It'll help your body recover. Leo frowned slightly, staring at the potion. It looked turbid and yellow, like pee, and once the thought entered his brain, he couldn't imagine himself drinking it at all. Nonetheless, giving the healer a firm nod, Leo swung his legs over the bedside, his feet hitting the cold floor, exhaling slowly before pushing himself upright. It feels painful, he realized, as every inch of his body hurt. However, while the pain was ever present, it was strangely manageable. He could move despite the pain, and that was all that mattered. Your body is not fully healed, so don't be reckless. Your mana reserves are still running low, so expect some fatigue. However, sip on that drink and eat well and you should be fine by tomorrow, she said, as she checked off some points on her patient sheet. Leo rolled his shoulders, stretching out the stiffness in his limbs before giving her a curt nod. Thanks, he said. However, the chief healer did not respond. She just gave him a knowing look before turning away, already moving to tend to the next patient. All right, the next class is the basics of perception. I have to go to Block D, Leo muttered to himself, as he did not linger around either. Walking swiftly, he began making his way to Sector D, while also thinking about how he must have become the biggest joke in class. Passing out on day 1, people must think I'm a fraud. Sigh. I'm going to become the center of jokes and bullying. People will pick on me, just because I'm number 1 and not worthy, Leo mused, as he almost dreaded moving to the next class. He was never one to be really affected by peer pressure, however, it did not feel good to be the butt of the jokes. Nonetheless, with no other options, he did make his way to the next class, where the atmosphere at his arrival was entirely different to what he had expected. Asterisk 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 asterisk. As Leo stepped into training ground D4, a heavy silence settled over the students already gathered there. He had expected whispers, sneers, maybe even a few mocking grins. He had expected people to call him out for passing out, for collapsing on day 1. But what he got was something completely different. The moment his presence registered, heads turned, slowly, almost cautiously. Eyes flickered toward him with an unreadable, wary. Some widened, others narrowed, and a few students even took half a step back, as if his very presence unsettled them. It was subtle, but Leo felt it. The eyes looking at him feared him, as if they saw him like a monster instead of a colleague, and Leo could not understand why. What's going on? He wondered, as he straightened his shoulders. He didn't slow his steps. Didn't let his expression shift and walked as if he was completely unbothered by the glances coming his way. But internally, he was confused. What the hell is this reaction? His gaze flicked across the students, scanning their faces, their body language. He caught bits and pieces of hushed conversations, not whispers of mockery, but of caution. Of disbelief. He's up already. 2 hours. That's all it took for him to recover from that. I thought he'd be out for the rest of the day, at least. He passed out but kept running, his body didn't stop. Leo's steps faltered slightly. What? Kept running. The words didn't make sense. He had collapsed, right. That's why he was in the infirmary. That's why he woke up there. But the murmurs continued. He was smiling the whole time like a freak. Why does he look so calm? He knows he's fooling no one with this fake calmness anymore yet. Leo's brow twitched. What the hell are they talking about? A shadow flickered in his peripheral vision, and Leo turned just as Mu Shen stepped into view, arms crossed, his usually laid-back expression nowhere to be found. You really are a freak, Skyshard, Mu Shen muttered, not in an insulting way, but as if he was still trying to process what he had seen. Leo frowned. What the hell happened? Mu Shen's lips parted slightly, as if about to answer. Then, all right, settle down. A sharp, commanding voice cut through the murmur of students, instantly snapping the air into focus. Leo turned his head toward the source, his attention locking onto the instructor standing at the front of the training field. A tall, wiry man with a piercing gaze and a predator's smile. His posture was relaxed, almost lazy, but something about him screamed danger. It was Professor Powell, instructor of basics of perception. Leo could tell just by looking at him, this was not a man to take lightly. Time to see if you can actually see, he said, as with a snap of his fingers he summoned a thin gray fog, to cover the entire training grounds. The gray fog that Professor Powell summoned dulled the surroundings around the students subtly. It didn't just reduce visibility, it muted sounds, dampened external disturbances, and wrapped the training ground in an unnatural stillness. It wasn't suffocating, but it was disorienting, making it impossible for students to perceive further than 15 meters from their location, hence sending their senses into overdrive. And it was in this altered atmosphere that Professor Powell disappeared from the location he was standing on, his voice reverberating from every corner of the open classroom as he began his lesson. Perception, he said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the haze, is not just about seeing. It is about understanding. His tone was steady, deliberate. He was not simply lecturing, he was teaching, and his every word had weight. The biggest mistake novices make in combat is assuming their eyes alone will save them. That if they can see an attack, they can react. That if they watch their opponent, they'll know what's coming. Powell scoffed, as the fog around the students seemed to shift, now growing thicker. You do not see with your eyes. You see with your mind. Powell said, his voice now growing more firm. Your eyes are merely a tool, a flawed, easily deceived tool. They fall for illusions, they misjudge speed, they fail to track movements in the heat of a fight. To survive, to thrive, to be the kind of warriors this academy is shaping you into, you need more than simple sight. Perception is the ability to process information, to recognize patterns, to know rather than guess. A true assassin does not watch their opponent's blade, they sense the shift in weight, the tension in their muscles before they even move. A swordsman does not look for openings, they feel the rhythm of battle, understanding when to strike without hesitation. An archer does not merely aim, they anticipate where their target will be, long before they move. A pause. Perception is not just about noticing your surroundings. It is about understanding them. The fog thickened, reducing visibility even further. The students tensed. In this mist, you are blind. So tell me, how will you fight? No one spoke. Powell chuckled. It wasn't a pleasant sound. You see, raw information is meaningless if you do not know how to interpret it. He let the words settle before continuing. Some of you, right now, are panicked. You've lost one of your senses, and instead of adapting, you freeze. Others are straining your eyes, trying to force sight through the fog. A mistake. You are relying on something that is already failing you. The tension thickened. To see is passive. To perceive is active. It means knowing what is happening even when your eyes are closed. It means recognizing the presence of a threat not because you saw them move, but because you felt the shift in the air. Because you heard the faintest scuff of a foot against the ground. Because your instincts told you something was wrong. There was no mockery in his tone, only truth. And that made it worse. This, Powell said finally, is why you are weak. A ripple of unease passed through the students as the fog surrounding them began to rapidly clear. However, as the fog cleared, to the horror of all students, standing behind each one of them, was a masked assassin, with their knives pointed towards their back. None of them had managed to perceive when the assassin had arrived behind them, or when they had arrived behind the individual beside them. As on the first day of the class, all of them collectively failed to perceive the threat to their lives. Holy shit. He got us. He got us all. How did these guys get here? I couldn't sense anything at all. I was looking back over my shoulders the whole time, but I still couldn't see it coming. Are we really that poor at perception? The students whispered amongst each other, as Powell's demonstration left everyone speechless. Even Su Yong, who walked around like he was the best, could not perceive the presence of the assassin behind him, as a deep frown spread on his face when he felt the cold tip of the dagger pressed against his back. He was not proud of being caught off guard like this, however, looking around as he saw both Mu Shen and Leo Skyshard facing the same fate, he somehow did not feel as bad as before. If any one of you is wondering why you need to take a class on perception before today, now you know why, Powell concluded, as with a clap of his hands he dismissed the gathered assassins. The students had no way of knowing that the assassins lurking around them were, in fact, highly skilled operatives, Grandmaster-level warriors hired specifically for this exercise. Their presence was far beyond what any of the students could hope to detect at their current level. But without that crucial piece of information, all they felt was inadequacy. Their failure to sense even a single presence gnawed at them, making them question their instincts, their training, their very worth. And yet, rather than feeling discouraged, it ignited something deeper, a raw, urgent desire to learn. To understand. To perceive beyond mere sight, which was exactly the professor's goal. Unlike your other courses, we will progress in the basics of perception class based on goals. You have 4 weeks to achieve each goal, after which we move on to the next. If you achieve your goal before time, you can take the remainder of the classes for that period off, no problem. However, if you lag behind, you better work extra time before bed, because I will deduct your grades and move on ruthlessly without waiting for you to catch up, Powell warned, as he explained the format for the class. The first objective is to eliminate blind spots in your vision. To achieve this, we begin with the fundamental perception skill, 360 degrees view. Your level of genetic talent will determine the version of this skill that you learn. Grandmaster level talents will have the opportunity to learn the legendary version of this skill, peripheral vision. Transcendent level talents can push further, advancing to the semi-divine tier, full vision. While our couple lucky monarch level talents will have access to the ultimate form, absolute vision, an ability that grants an unparalleled field of perception. Your task over the next 4 weeks is simple. Master the skill to intermediate grade for full marks. Achieve only basic grade, and you'll pass, but barely. Fail to learn it at all, and you get point deductions from the very start. This is your first step toward true awareness. Let's see how many of you actually have what it takes. Powell said, as with a clap of his fingers, he summoned digital skill scrolls that landed precisely as per one's genetic talent in their hands. Leo and Su Yong got the ultimate version of the skill, in the form of absolute vision, while Mu Shen and the other top geniuses got full vision. However, the majority of the class got peripheral vision, showing how even within the elite class, over 70% of the students gathered were still Grandmaster level talents at best. After receiving their skill holograms, Professor Powell instructed the students to review their scrolls, ensuring they grasped the fundamental concepts before he provided further explanation. As per his instruction, all students activated their assigned holograms, as detailed diagrams and explanations flickered into view before them. Each hologram contained a mana circulation map, illustrating how to activate the 360 degrees view technique assigned to them, and while the foundational concept was the same, the specific functionality of the move varied depending on the grade of the skill. For the majority of the class, those assigned the technique, peripheral vision, the skill functioned as a passive sonar. It alerted them to movement in their blind spots at all times, but without providing a clear image. It was like having an internal radar constantly pinging disturbances behind them, but without precise details. The limits of their senses only alerted them of projectiles coming their way and of the rough size they were. However, it did not reveal the exact shape. It was impossible for a user of peripheral vision to distinguish between a pebble coming their way versus a dagger. However, having the ability to sense projectiles coming their way from their blind spot was already a big boon. In contrast, students who were assigned the skill, full vision, had access to a more advanced perception method. Instead of a general awareness, their perception became three-dimensional. They could sense depth, shape, and distance, creating a mental image of objects in their blind spots. They could actively focus on a specific area without turning their head to search for enemies behind a tree in their blind spot, or to make sure allies were tagging along, making it far more refined than just an alert system. However, there were still limitations to this method. Using this technique, one can still not perceive colors and other sensory information from their blind spots, making it less effective to see through illusions. However, still an excellent technique to master. Finally, at the highest tier, absolute vision had none of these restrictions. Rather than using sonar-like awareness or three-dimensional mapping, this version of the skill eliminated one's blind spots entirely. Through advanced mana manipulation, the user could directly perceive their surroundings as if they had eyes on the back of their head, giving mental imagery akin to real eyes. Using this skill, the brain processed information exactly like normal vision, creating a seamless 360 degrees field of sight, incorporating everything from color to precise depth perception. Once mastered, a user of this skill could even perceive the world with their real eyes closed, and they would never feel the difference. With this skill fully mastered, ambushes against the user became next to impossible, as stealth attacks would lose all meaning. It was a complete removal of the natural limitations of human sight, and the limit of what a perception skill could be. Asterisk 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 asterisk. As the students studied their scrolls, the difference in difficulty between the diagrams on each table became apparent. Those with peripheral vision had a simple circulation pattern, just enough to expand their awareness. Full vision required a more intricate mana flow, allowing for three-dimensional spatial mapping. But absolute vision had the most complex structure. The user's mana had to be precisely controlled, and their brains had to be continuously fed with visual input without causing sensory overload. It wasn't just a technique, it was a complete rewiring of how their brain's perception functioned. Hence, while most students were simply trying to grasp the basics, Leo and Su-Yong tried to make sense of the sheer absurd diagram in front of them. With Leo in particular, finding the text in front of him extremely hard to understand. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Leo read the instructions on his scroll that read, "Circulate the mana as shown in the diagram in front of you," and realized that he did not remember how to circulate the mana in his body at all. It was the same restriction he had faced the previous day when he had spent hours trying to practice his newly acquired meditation manual, only to fail miserably. No matter how much he focused, how much he willed his body to comply, there was no reaction. He could not sense, let alone manipulate, the mana flowing within him. At the time, he had come to terms with the fact that he would need to learn the basics of mana sensing and circulation before making any meaningful progress. However, what he hadn't expected was to land in a situation where his inability to perform such a basic function would become a problem the very next day. And yet, here he was. Leo's gaze flickered toward the diagram projected in front of him. The intricately detailed mana circulation chart mapped out the exact flow paths needed to activate the absolute vision technique. The concept was simple enough in theory: follow the channels, direct the flow, and engage with the surrounding mana to create a seamless perception field. But for Leo, none of this meant anything if he couldn't even take the first step. Damn it. He exhaled sharply, his words leaving his mouth in a soft curse, as he blamed his memory loss for placing him in this unnecessary situation. However, before he could wallow in self-pity, it was Professor Powell who grabbed everyone's attention, as he began explaining his take on mastering the technique. "All right everyone, pay attention to me for a second," he said, as he drew everyone's attention to himself. "I'm going to share my experience on how to master this method, and while the specifics will vary person to person, you will all broadly face 3 stages of problems to master this technique. In the first phase, you will learn how to replicate activating this technique without needing to look at the diagram. This is the easiest step, and all you need to do to complete it is to memorize the technique perfectly and learn how to perform it at will. Using it once will provide you with 3 to 5 seconds of 360 degrees vision, which is fine for now. In the second phase, we learn how to make it last forever. Basically what you need to do is, you learn how to activate the skill within the time frame of taking one breath, basically training your brain to perform the move so fast that it becomes second nature to you. This is the hardest stage and many of you will struggle here. In the final stage, you will learn how to do it subconsciously. Make it a passive skill that's active at all times, even when you sleep. You will start performing it effortlessly without even needing to think how to perform it, and that's when you will hit basic mastery. My expectations from all of you is that you will hit basic mastery for this skill within the first 4 weeks of this class, with every session between now and evaluation day being more or less a doubt-solving session to help students who have seen their progress stagnate at some particular part. You can choose to attend or not. But come evaluation day, I expect all of you to attain basic mastery for passing marks and intermediate mastery for full marks. Powell said, as he concluded today's lecture on this note. Leo did not expect to be dismissed from the basics of perception class a mere 35 minutes after it began. However, much to his surprise, he was giving him ample time to head for an early lunch. Having already missed breakfast, he was starving, and so, without hesitation, he made his way toward the mess hall, though he quickly noticed he was one of the few who did. Most students opted to head back to their dorms, preferring to rest before grabbing a meal later, but Leo chose otherwise. Lunch service had already begun, and with his next lecture still 2.5 hours away, he had more than enough time to eat and focus on solving his mana sensing problem. However, just as he stepped out of the training grounds and onto the stone-paved pathway leading toward the mess hall, a quiet, feminine voice whispered beside him. "You've lost your memories too, haven't you? I can tell." A sharp chill ran down Leo's spine as he heard those words being spoken to him. His instincts flared, his muscles tensed, and his heartbeat rose as his hand moved on reflex, reaching for the dagger at his utility belt, only to grasp at nothing. His weapons weren't on him since he was not required to carry them for the first 2 classes, which only made his heart skip a beat once more. "No need to panic. I won't hurt you." The voice spoke again, calm and steady, as Leo turned his head slightly, his gaze falling onto the speaker. To his surprise, the source of the voice was a small girl, no taller than 5'2", walking merrily beside him. She had shoulder-length dark brown hair, large black eyes, and a youthful face that gave her an almost doll-like appearance. If not for the elite class skill scroll clutched in her arms, Leo might have mistaken her for a faculty member's child. But that scroll told him otherwise. She wasn't just a student, she was a colleague, someone who had earned her place in the elite class, just like him. At first glance, she didn't appear remotely threatening. And yet, despite her harmless appearance, she had managed to sneak up on him and startle him. Which was a fact that Leo did not appreciate. His expression remained unreadable as he silently observed her, waiting for further explanation. But the girl, unfazed by his silence, smiled slightly before continuing in an easy, measured tone. "I'm Mu Ryan," she said, her black eyes meeting his directly. "I have also lost my memories just like you. If you don't mind, can I tag along? I don't feel safe around the others alone." Leo's stomach twisted slightly at her words. His first instinct was one of immediate suspicion. He did not trust easily, especially not strangers who could seemingly see right through him. How did she know about his memory loss? How could she tell? Even Su Yong and Mu Shen, his closest competitors, had yet to pick up on his amnesia. But somehow, she had. Was she bluffing, taking a calculated guess, testing his reaction, or did she truly share the same experience? His eyes narrowed slightly as he considered his next move, but before he could say a word, Mu Ryan suddenly reached out and tugged at his arm, pulling herself closer as she matched his stride, as if walking beside him was the most natural thing in the world. Leo tensed. "I never agreed to you hanging around me." His voice was calm, though his body language remained guarded. He tried to pull his arm free, but Mu Ryan's grip was surprisingly firm. "You can't say no." She tilted her head slightly, her tone carrying quiet certainty. "I'm technically your cousin, or younger sister. Even if you don't remember, you're most likely from the Mu clan as well." Leo stilled. His mind immediately went on high alert. Twice now, twice in mere moments, this girl had pulled details about him out of thin air. Details he had barely admitted to himself. His suspected ties to the Mu clan were something he had kept to himself, something he wasn't even fully sure of. And yet, she spoke of it with such ease, as if it were already fact, making his weariness deepen. At this point, he felt like he had no choice but to let her stay close. Not because he trusted her, but because if he didn't, he might never figure out what exactly she had seen in him, what subtle tells he had unknowingly revealed, that had given his past away. "How do you know I'm from the Mu clan?" Leo asked, as Mu Ryan quietly hummed a song beside him instead of answering. For a while, she ignored him, but then as the mess hall drew closer, she finally turned to speak. "I'll tell you once we fill our plates and are seated for lunch. However, if I satisfy your curiosity, you have to agree to letting me hang out with you from now on," Mu Ryan demanded, as Leo cautiously agreed to her demands. Leo and Mu Ryan chose an empty corner table to sit in, as they ate in silence across one another. For a while, none of them talked to one another and only focused on the food on their plate, until eventually Mu Ryan began with her explanation. "How I figured out your identity is not arc-ship science, it's pretty basic if I'm being honest," she began, as she sheepishly looked into Leo's eyes. "Just like you, I have been sent here without my memories as well. However, unlike you, I've kept my original name," Mu Ryan said, as she swallowed a bite of her food. "I too was stressing out after arriving here about information about this universe. About how to gain context to conversations around me that I might be missing. And that led me to the Academy Library, but I apparently arrived there a day after you did," Mu Ryan said, as she gave him an innocent smile. "The librarian there recommended the same book that you read the day before, and told me about how there was a student who came in there just a day ago with the same problem as me. So that's where I knew about your memory loss from," Mu Ryan clarified, as Leo suddenly understood where he had lapsed. Although many minor clans wipe off memory of their scions, hoping to pass off as Mu clan spawns, none of them usually have the same talent as you. Monarch-level talents usually have a direct bloodline connection to gods, and the only major clan with connection to gods who wipes the memories of their descendants is the Mu clan. So I just made an educated guess about the same, Mu Ryan said, as she shrugged her shoulders in nonchalance. "I'm suffering here alone, big brother. I don't like the gazes of the men around me in class. They see me as a weak doll although I'm a transcendent level talent, and without having any memories of what skills I possess, I feel like I need to stay around you, or I'll be the target of a lot of bullying. Just today, between the first and second class, they bullied the student who dropped the first during the morning training. I wasn't there, but I heard that they dunked his face in the toilet for being trash, and I don't want to be the next one getting that treatment. Currently, between you and Mu Shen, you're the more feared student in class, so I've decided to hang around you for my personal security, Mu Ryan shamelessly clarified, as Leo slapped his own face in disbelief. Although he wasn't 100% convinced about Mu Ryan's innocence, for now at least, he perceived her to be harmless. Mu Ryan's clarification gave Leo a lot to think about, especially with regards to his memory loss. The librarian had told him a couple days ago that they had 2 to 3 students every year that walked into the academy with issues of memory loss, meaning that this had to be a common occurrence. And between that scrawny kid that was beat up by Su Yang, Mu Ryan and himself, there were 3 students who suffered with memory loss this year as well. In Leo's understanding, if this was such a common occurrence every year, then it would not be too bad if details about his memory loss were eventually leaked. However, not wanting to risk it, he still wanted to protect the secret as close to his chest as possible for now. I see, Leo replied in a heavy voice, as he swallowed a mouthful of food, before opening a stamina regeneration potion and taking a sip. If all of us are from the Mu clan, then why do you think Mu Shen was allowed to come to the academy with his memories intact? While you were allowed to keep your name, and I was assigned a fake name? Leo asked, probing for more information from Mu Ryan, as he wanted to understand her take on the world. To be honest, big brother, I'm not too sure, but in my limited understanding of the Mu clan, the upbringing of clan talents is not decided by the birth parents but the Council of Elders, Mu Ryan began, as she explained the topic to Leo with a passion. They say that when a child comes of age, the elders sit and decide the best route for their growth, and based on the child's personality and other factors, it's decided as to how they are to be exposed to the world, Mu Ryan said, as she presented Leo with a very interesting theory. If they are disciplined and their personality is deemed to be regal and fitting of the clan name, they don't undergo a wiping of their memories. So my assumption is that brother Mu Shen fits that criteria. He keeps to himself, he doesn't partake in bullying others and is a great talent. Definitely worthy of bearing the clan name, Mu Ryan explained, as she nodded her head in satisfaction. In contrast, even though I don't have my memories, I know for a fact that I'm a problem child. I have an eccentric personality and my range of emotions are wild. I can go from being really sad to really happy in a matter of moments, so it's probably not a good look for the clan if I behave that way in the outer world. My assumption is that they decided I needed a fresh start to perhaps work on some of my flaws, which is probably why I woke up with a list of weaknesses to work on also imprinted in my brain, Mu Ryan said, as she tapped towards her forehead in glee. Finally, I think you're the worst of the bunch. You must have hit the jackpot of having a personality so rotten that the elders hate you, and a talent so grand that they can't deny you, that they have sent you out into the world without your memories and your real name. They will most likely accept you back into the clan if you make a proper warrior of yourself and bring the clan honor. However, if you accidentally get crippled or die, or if you don't live up to your potential, they will probably disown you, since they don't want problem kids like you in the clan, Mu Ryan said, as she gave Leo a friendly thumbs up. However, Leo did not find this explanation funny at all. So if I don't live up to my talents, the clan will most certainly disown me and force me to live out the rest of my days alone. Is that what you're saying? Leo asked, as Mu Ryan vehemently nodded. If you don't live up to your talents, the clan will disown you, yes. Also, I'll go hug the thighs of my brother Mu Shen, because I don't want to be associated with a loser. So I will abandon you too, Mu Ryan said, as Leo felt his left eye flicker in anger at her words. He had never even willingly accepted her company in the first place, however, she was already threatening to leave him if he did not shine. What a cartoon character, Leo concluded, as he let out a deep sigh and returned his focus to his food. Asterisk 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 asterisk. 2 hours later, lecture hall A2. Leo arrived at the next class about 20 minutes before the lecture was scheduled to begin. He chose an empty seat in the third row to be seated, so that he did not show up at the very front of the class but was not mixed with the backbenchers either. It was the perfect sweet spot that would allow him to study anonymously, as he felt quite excited for the upcoming class, General Magic Theory, which was purely a theoretical subject. Beside him, sat Mu Ryan, who unlike him could not sit still at all. She had to fidget about constantly, whether it was to raise the height of her seat, arrange her note-taking supplies, or just spin around for fun to kill time. In a way, Leo did not mind her childish behavior as he found himself capable of turning a blind eye to it. However, on another note he felt worried for the woman, as he could not imagine any circumstance where such a restless individual could turn out to be a good assassin, when assassination was a primarily stealth-related profession. In so early. Skyshard. Don't tell me you have that dork gene in you, a male voice mocked him, as Leo turned to see Su Yong entering the room. Unlike him, he walked straight to the last row of the class, where he slouched until his head was barely above the table. Theoretical classes bore me, I reserve my enthusiasm for the battlefield, he declared loudly, even though nobody was paying attention to him in particular. Guess he's just a weirdo, Leo thought, as he ignored him, and patiently waited for the class to begin. A little while later, the class completely filled up, as Professor David walked into the room with an air of authority about himself. This seemed to be a common feature amongst all professors in the university, as they all seemed to exude an aura of strength and authority. After walking in, he took a quick glance at his watch, and on the exact stroke of 2:30 p.m., broke off a piece of chalk and began writing on the blackboard behind him. Tap, tap, screech, tap, what is mana? He wrote, before turning, as just as he was about to speak, a student came running into the class. Boom. With a casual flick of his wrist, Professor David flung the kid who came in late, with as much speed as he came in, as the poor student found himself slipping on the hard floor as he hit the passageway railing. You're late and hence you're not welcome in my class. Try to enter without permission again, and I promise I will break your bones. David said in a cold, ruthless voice, as the poor student who dared walk in late, ran away from the professor's sight in fear, not daring to linger before him any longer. This professor is stern, is what Leo and pretty much everyone else in the class thought, as automatically they straightened their spines and maintained absolute decorum. Nobody wanted to be the target of the professor's ire, and hence everyone tried their best to not spook him. Professor David seemed to appreciate this atmosphere, as with a curt nod, he began his class. Good afternoon all. I am David Meninges, and I am your professor for the Magic Theory class, as well as the head supervisor for all first-year students. I expect 100% attendance in all my classes, and I expect you to arrive 5 minutes before the class begins, he said in a deep, peculiar voice, as he gestured towards the door. As you can see, I do not have a tolerance for latecomers, so if you're here after me, it's best to keep walking and not try to enter my class. That being said, enough time is wasted already, let's begin with today's education, David said, as he turned his body from facing the door to facing the blackboard. Magic theory is the fundamental behind how everything functions in the universe. How spells are made, how meditation manuals are made, how complex mana machineries are made, alchemy, blacksmithing, you name it, and I can show you the application of magic theory in it. It's one of the absolute fundamentals of the modern world, and hence its education is of paramount importance, David explained, as Leo immediately found himself engrossed in his teachings. Having lost his memory, Leo found his curiosity for learning enhanced these days, as he felt like an empty sponge that wanted to soak everything that was available around him. That being said, the basis of magic theory is mana. Which is why we begin with the question on the board. What is mana? David said, as he turned back towards the class, scanning the crowd until his eyes landed on Leo sitting peacefully in the third row. Skyshard, get up, tell me what mana is. David commanded, as for a moment Leo felt confused on how the professor knew his name and face already. Standing up, Leo looked at him in confusion, as without his memories he had no proper context to construct a proper response, which was why he could only apologize in shame. "I'm sorry, Professor, I'm not very knowledgeable in this subject. I cannot explain what mana is," Leo replied, his cheeks flushing slightly red, as he candidly admitted his shortcomings. The reaction from the crowd was muted. Some giggled, others looked at him with indifference, however, none seemed to think it was a particularly big deal. However, all this changed once the professor began humiliating Leo. "You don't know what mana is. You're a warrior that managed to survive the brutal assassin entrance exam to enroll into this academy, but you don't know what mana is. You must be quite lucky to make it this far with such a dumb brain," David insulted, as now the class burst into soft giggles. There was no need for such personal attacks, however, it was clear by the crazed look in David's eyes that he had a vendetta against Leo that he was unwilling to let go of, from the very first day. "Guess intelligence doesn't get passed down in genes. You have to actually study for it. Must be the reason behind why the most brilliant scientists of our times are never from the 6 great clans," David said, as he rolled his eyes around to check out every student that belonged to the great clans, as he defiantly stared them down. "Well, this is an advanced class, Mr. Skyshard, we don't pamper kids here. If you don't know what mana is, I suggest you head to the library and expand your knowledge base before attending my classes. Till then, get out," David said coldly, as Leo simply stared at him in confusion. He had not expected such hostility from the professor today, nor did he understand the reason behind it. This was supposed to be a place of learning, and he had been nothing but respectful. There was no reason to kick him out of class, however, the professor seemed to be hell-bent on doing it regardless. "Are you deaf, Skyshard? Or just incredibly dumb that you can't register simple instructions at once? I said, get out," David reiterated while pointing towards the door, as this time Leo began to move, his anger boiling under his breath, as he controlled his emotions. He did not give the professor an angry look before heading out. No. He did not give him the satisfaction of showing that he managed to agitate him, and instead, he walked out with his head down, as some of his classmates laughed at his retreating figure. Once outside, Leo gnashed his teeth and kicked his leg against the hallway wall, as he tried to figure out where he went wrong. However, upon self-reflection, he realized that there was nothing that he could have done otherwise. It was clearly the professor who was biased against him. However, Leo did not even remember having done anything that would have remotely pissed him off. After kicking Leo out of the class, David immediately turned his attention to Su-young, as he passed on the same question to him. Getting up lazily from his slouched position on the last bench, Su-young looked down on David with indifferent eyes, as he cooked up a half-assed reply. "Mana is the force that powers magic. It flows freely through the rainbow stream in the universe, which can be visualized as a wave of energy that covers countless planets and galaxies. Beings born within this rainbow stream have learned how to harness mana and use it to perform magic. Which is the fundamental to becoming a warrior," he said, as while it was not an incorrect answer, it wasn't a perfect one either. However, as if not impressed by his answer at all, David began shaking his head in disappointment, as he grasped the opportunity to berate Su-young. "Wow, we have another mentally retarded student in class here, seems like we are going 2 for 2 this year," David said, as he purposefully began humiliating Su-young. "I could have asked this question to a 4-year-old and probably gotten the same reply. Mr. Young, it makes me wonder if your brain has stopped evolving since you were 4. Perhaps you were dropped on your head as a child," David said, as the whole class began laughing at his joke. However, while Leo took the insults with his head down, Su-young was not the type to do the same. He smiled, as he stared defiantly in the professor's eyes, which only irked the professor even more. "I'm glad you find this funny. I would laugh on myself too if I were you," David said, his tone slightly irritated now, as the smile on Su-young's face widened even more. "Oh, but you wish you were me, Professor, you wish you were. But you're not. You're an inferior born, and you'll never become a transcendent level warrior, much less a monarch. And neither will your kids. Because they share your filthy blood. You can school me all you want today, but remember to keep your insults measured. I'm not as tolerating as Skyshard. And I may just come back 10 years in the future to end you and your bloodline for a silly joke that you made today. So I would smile even broadly than how you are today, if I were you, since my time in this universe might be more limited than I imagined, Su-Yang threatened, as David's gaze darkened at this blatant disrespect. Su-Yang struck a nerve with his insult today, a nerve that hit David right where it hurt the most, and the anger was visible on his face. Out! Get out! He screamed, his face turning a bright shade of red, as Su-Yang defiantly walked out from in front of him. At that moment, it took all the willpower that David had in his body to not lift his hand on a student. Because, if this was not the academy grounds they were in right now, he would have unquestionably killed Su-Yang today, right where he stood. Leo was surprised to see Su-Yang follow him outside the classroom. He had been about to leave when the class erupted into another round of giggles, followed by an abrupt silence, until the professor's furious shout rang out once more. Get out! This time, it was Su-Yang who stepped out. Having no idea what Su-Yang had done wrong, Leo looked at him, confusion evident in his eyes. For a brief moment, Su-Yang met his gaze with a frown, but then, as if flipping a switch, his usual smug smile returned, and he let out a loud chuckle. Why are you looking at me like that, Skyshard? Did you really think you were the only one he had a vendetta against? Su-Yang asked, his choice of words leaving Leo utterly perplexed. Vendetta. Of course it's a vendetta, Su-Yang scoffed. We're not the first batch David has taught, and every single year, without fail, he targets the top talents in the class, humiliating them daily just to make the less gifted students feel like the universe is a fair and equal place. Leo narrowed his eyes as Su-Yang continued, his tone laced with amusement. Senior brother Du Liang already warned me about his biased behavior, which is why I came prepared with a response in case he decided to poke me today. And that dumb motherfucker did poke me. So, naturally, I put him in his place, Su-Yang said, his grin widening. So that's how it was, Leo murmured, realization settling in. For a moment, I couldn't understand why I was kicked out for doing absolutely nothing. But it turns out, he just hates talent. Su-Yang shrugged, completely unbothered. Anyone without talent hates those who have it, Skyshard. That's how the universe works. The commoners despise the 6 great clans because we only intermarry amongst ourselves, keeping our bloodlines pure. But do you know what happens to the clan members who marry out of love, outside of the great clans? Without waiting for a response, Su-Yang answered his own question. They face heavy social stigma. They struggle with cultural differences. The commoners reject them, unable to accept their refined upbringing, and their lives become an endless cycle of squabbling and regret. Their children are born weaker, lacking the clan's support, and they don't receive the same training or privileges as a noble heir. In the end, those who marry for love either abandon their partners to return to the clan or die bitter and disillusioned. Su-Yang crossed his arms, his voice taking on an air of finality. The world of nobles and commoners is like oil and water, Skyshard. We may exist within the same academy, much like oil and water in a single vessel, but we can never mix. Oil will always rise above water, yet some people refuse to accept this fundamental truth of the universe. His gaze sharpened, his words carrying an unmistakable edge. You and I, we are oil. But unlike you, Skyshard, I wear my heritage with pride. My grandfather is the Su family god, and his blood runs through my veins. So I'll be damned if I let some second-rate teacher insult me in class. His words left Leo with much to think about. Before this class, Leo did not expect teachers to have biases against the students. However, perhaps he was being too naive. Just like how there would be a few instructors who would be blown away by Leo and Su-Yang's talent and favor them in class. There would be some that disliked them for the same. There were all kinds of people in the universe, and it was a dumb choice to drop one's guard against any of them. Come on Skyshard, let's head over to the practical combat arena. This is a good opportunity for both of us to spar without 1,000 eyes on us, Su Yang urged, as Leo looked towards Su Yang with his eyebrow raised. On a deep level, he did not mind sparring with Su Yang today, hell, he even felt excited for it. However, without knowing how to circulate mana or use his skills, he felt hesitant to head into a fight, which he knew he could not win. What? You're too scared to fight me? Su Yang asked, as he sensed Leo's hesitation. However, Leo only shook his head in response. No, I'm not scared. Let's go, he said, as Su Yang slapped his back hard. Now that's what I expect from my rival. Ha ha ha, this spar is going to be legendary. Su Yang said, as both of them grinned and jogged their way towards the practical combat arena. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Leo was not naive. He did not let fleeting emotions cloud his judgment, and although it appeared as if he had agreed to spar with Su Yang on a whim, that was far from the truth. From the moment he set foot in the academy, Leo had known that, sooner or later, he would have to spar against other students, many of whom could likely wipe the floor with him. To avoid that fate, he first needed to understand where he stood in the class hierarchy and gauge his own strength. After the morning's physical training session, Leo found himself genuinely intrigued. His body possessed remarkable endurance, yet he had no memory of ever training it. Despite that gap in knowledge, the results spoke for themselves. His physique was far superior to that of an average human. Just this morning, he had run over 40 kilometers without stopping, maintaining speeds that would be impossible even for professional marathon runners. Hence, it was clear that his physical capabilities exceeded the limits of peak human performance. And that was why he agreed to spar with Su Yang, for he was desperate to know just how strong he truly was. As the duo stepped into the practical combat facility, they were greeted by the in-house instructor, Major Hen, who seemed perplexed by their early arrival. Why are you boys here so early? Class doesn't start for another hour and a half, the major remarked, his gaze shifting between the two students. Su Yang stepped forward to answer, his usual arrogance tempered by an air of respect. Major, this is Leo Skyshard, and I'm Su Yang. We're both Monarch-level talents, and we were politely dismissed from Professor David's class earlier today. Since we have some free time, we'd like to spar and stretch our muscles a bit. It would be an honor if you could officiate the bout. Leo raised a brow. Unlike his usual brashness, Su Yang's tone carried an unexpected level of decorum. He spoke to the major with genuine respect, something that didn't go unnoticed. Major Hen studied them for a moment before exhaling through his nose, a small smirk forming on his lips. Ah, what the hell, why not? This should be an interesting fight to watch. He crossed his arms and gave them a firm look. Gear up. And remember, no targeting the vital organs, eyes, or groin. Unless you want me to personally beat the crap out of both of you. Su Yang bowed slightly in gratitude. Thank you, Major. Wasting no time, he turned and rushed toward the weapons rack in the corner, his enthusiasm evident. Leo followed suit, his fingers skimming over the selection until he found a dagger that felt comfortable in his grip. Rodova Military Academy, the practical combat grounds. The two combatants stood at opposite ends of the sparring ring, clad in protective gear, as mandated by the academy. Leo adjusted the arm pads, knee guards, and light body armor strapped to his frame, shifting slightly to test his mobility. His helmet fit snugly, obscuring part of his vision, but he ignored the discomfort. Since regulations demanded that he must wear a helmet, this one was the best fit, although it blocked part of his vision slightly. Across from him, Su Yang grinned as he flexed his fingers around the grip of a training sword, its edge dull but still formidable. Leo, on the other hand, took a different approach. He strapped a utility belt around his waist, filling it with daggers, their hilts snugly secured within easy reach. Two more were drawn into his hands, their familiar weight bringing a sense of reassurance, as he mentally prepared himself for the battle ahead. It doesn't matter if I lose, I just need to understand what this body is capable of, Leo thought to himself, as he let out a series of deep breaths, as if to instinctively calm his heart rate and increase his focus. Planning to throw them at me? Or do you actually know how to use them up close? Su Yang asked, eyeing the daggers in his hand, as Leo ignored his comment, instead shifting into a ready stance, as he prepared for combat. Major Hen observed them for a moment before raising his voice. Combatants, take your starting positions. Leo exhaled, steadying his nerves. Su Yang, ever the showman, rolled his shoulders lazily before pointing his sword toward Leo. Try not to embarrass yourself too quickly, Skyshard. Leo resisted the urge to retort. Words wouldn't help him here. Begin, the major said, as the moment the signal was given, Su Yang exploded forward. Leo barely had time to process the movement before a blur of sword slash came screaming toward him. His instincts roared, and he flung himself sideways just in time. Whoosh! The massive sword slash sliced through the air where his torso had been, missing him by a hair's breadth. A cold sweat trickled down his spine. Had he been even a fraction of a second slower, that hit would have caved in his ribs despite the armor. But before he could even recalibrate, Su Yang was already on him. Oh, shit. Leo barely managed to raise his daggers in time as the next strike came. Clang! The impact rattled through his arms like a shockwave. His right-hand dagger flew from his grasp, spinning through the air before clattering against the arena floor. His left dagger remained, but his grip was shaky. Su Yang's eyes gleamed. You showed too many openings, Skyshard. Then, he attacked. One strike. Then another. Then another. Leo blocked the first few, but it was a downhill battle from there. Su Yang's relentless offense was overwhelming, his strikes fast, precise, and filled with raw power. Thud. A heavy thud landed against Leo's ribs, forcing him to stagger back, barely maintaining his footing. Clap. A sharp hit clipped his shoulder, causing his balance to waver. Bam. A downward strike slammed against his armored thigh, nearly sending him to his knees. Left, right, center. Blow after blow rained down, the blunt end of Su Yang's sword battering him mercilessly. Leo gritted his teeth as the realization set in. He was being completely outclassed. Every time he tried to retaliate, Su Yang's sword was already there, knocking his attacks aside as if they were child's play. It wasn't just that Su Yang was stronger. It wasn't just that he was faster. It was the way he fought, with the effortless confidence of someone who wasn't even taking the fight seriously. As if Leo wasn't a threat. As if this was all just entertainment to him. A deep frustration bubbled within Leo as another brutal strike landed against his side, forcing him back once more. His grip tightened around the one dagger he had left. He had to do something. However, all his fighting spirit amounted to nothing in front of Su Yang's supremacy, as one last attack by his opponent to his chin sent him crashing towards the floor, with stars circling before his eyes. The spar was over, as Hen intervened and declared Su Yang as the winner. Stop. Winner Su Yang, Major Hen said, as a deep frown spread over his face. Yang, god damn it boy, your swordsmanship is beautiful. Well done. Skyshard, you fight like a moron. What the hell was this stance? Why did you not use your combat skills to get out of the tough spot you found yourself in? What were you even doing? Major Hen said, as after praising Su Yang, he absolutely admonished Leo. Is this kid really a monarch-level talent? What clan are you from, boy? What's the story here, son? Hen asked, alternating his gaze between Leo on the floor and Su Yang, as he waited for an explanation. He's supposed to be a monarch-level talent, but I don't know why he fights so poorly, Major. I came here expecting a war, but I found myself fighting against a baby, Su Yang said, as Leo struggled back to his feet, his bloody nose and bruised cheeks a sorry sight to watch. I don't have my memories, Major. I've forgotten everything about myself but my instincts. I don't remember what skills I have, or how I used to fight. I don't even remember how strong I'm supposed to be, Leo replied candidly, as both Su Yang and Major Hen were taken aback instantly by his response. Mew. Both of them said at once, as if something just made sense in their heads, as letting out a deep sigh, Soo-young shook his head from side to side. Just when I thought I've found myself a rival, life plays a cruel prank on me again. Fuckkkk, he cursed, his anger genuine, as he seemed to be pissed that Leo did not have his memories on him. Major Hen mumbled, as he scratched his head and shook it from side to side in disappointment. I don't know why they do this to their own kids. The Mew clan is full of crazies, Major Hen said, as after contemplating for a while, he placed a sympathetic hand over Leo's shoulder and pointed towards the exit door. Go to the teacher's staff room on floor 2, and look for a female instructor called Nian Fei. Tell her about your memory loss and tell her that it's Major Hen who has sent you. She's the specialist at the Academy for Mind Control Magic and Memory Loss. Perhaps she can recover some bits of your memory that will help you become more of your usual self again, Hen said, as he gave Leo's shoulders a good squeeze. Thank you, Major, Leo said, giving him a thankful bow, as the Major gave him a soft smile. Become stronger fast, my boy, else the rest of your class will eat you up, he said, as Leo took his advice to heart. This isn't over, Skyshard. Today's fight doesn't count. I want to face you at your best, so you better get back to your peak, as fast as you can. Soo-young demanded, as Leo gave him a simple thumbs up. Internally, he did not view Soo-young as a rival. Hell, he did not even care what the bloke thought about him. However, having fought him today, Leo got an understanding of just how weak he was compared to the best student of this year, and the gap between them was simply massive. Soo-young had defeated him today without so much as breaking a sweat, and that in itself told Leo all he needed to know about where he stood in the academy hierarchy. Rodova Military Academy 2nd floor, Administration Building, Teacher's Staff Room. As Leo made his way toward the staff room, his mind lingered on the aftermath of his fight with Soo-young. Revealing his memory loss to Soo-young had been a gamble. A weakness exposed. A vulnerability laid bare. But in the end, something good had come from it. Major Hen had given him a lead, a professor who might have the ability to help him recover his lost memories, and if it actually worked out, Leo felt like it could be a game changer. If I can recover my memory without relying on the ones who erased it, then I can take back control of my life. That thought alone filled him with a renewed sense of determination. Optimistic, he reached his destination with a soft smile tugging behind his bruised lips. Taking a steady breath, he stood outside the staff room and calmly called the name of the instructor given to him. Instructor Nian Fei. He waited, arms relaxed at his sides, trying to appear unaffected. But the moment the door opened, and she stepped out, the air in his lungs turned to stone. He knew her. Those short hair, olive skin, those stern eyes. She was the one who had given him the orientation tour. She was the one who had slipped him the second chit. And now she was standing before him, eyebrow raised, as if she hadn't been a part of the group that had wiped his memories. A sharp chill ran through him. Of all the people Hen could have sent him to, why did it have to be her? These were not the circumstances under which he had wanted to meet her. Yes. How may I help you today, student? She said, her voice calm, as looking into her prying eyes Leo's body tensed, his feet taking an instinctive step back. He stammered, words fumbling over themselves before he inhaled sharply and forced himself to steady. He couldn't afford to look weak. Not now. Lifting his chin slightly, he met her gaze, his voice strong despite the unease coiling in his chest. Major Hen sent me to see you, ma'am. He said you could help me with my memory loss. He said, as he gauged her reaction. Hen. How long before your next lecture starts? Fei said, as she glanced at the watch on her wrist. A little over an hour, ma'am, Leo replied, as she nodded and gestured for him to follow her. Come over to my room. It's not a guarantee whether I can help you out or not, but I'll give it a shot, Fei said, as she began walking towards her room, with Leo in tow. Asterisk 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 asterisk. Tap, tap, tap. Fei's boots clicked against the polished tiles in a steady, rhythmic beat. Unlike Leo, who moved without a sound, her stride was practiced, disciplined, and predictable. In a fight, he could probably hear her coming from 100 meters away. But right now, as he followed behind her, the sharp echo of her footsteps was the least of his concerns. Will she try to harm me once we're alone? Will she actually help me regain my memory? Am I finally going to get some of the answers I've been searching for? Doubt churned inside him, each step bringing a fresh wave of uncertainty. His heart and mind being tangled in a mess of emotions. Yet, despite everything, despite knowing she was part of the group that had erased his memories, he somehow did not feel threatened in her presence. Instinct told him that me and Faye held no killing intent towards him. But instinct alone wasn't enough to trust her. His fingers brushed over the concealed dagger tucked within his uniform, the same one he had stashed secretly after the sparring session. It was his last resort. A plan B, for if things went sideways. Soon, they arrived at the teacher's quarters. Faye stopped before her door, pressing her palm against the biometric scanner. The lock clicked open, and she stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter first. "Thank you," Leo said politely, stepping inside without hesitation. As soon as he crossed the threshold, Faye followed, the door sealing shut behind her with an audible whoosh. Leo's eyes flickered to the lock mechanism. It was air-sealed. The moment the door shut, the security system automatically re-engaged, indicating that even exiting the room was going to require biometric verification, meaning, he was locked in until Faye let him out. There goes my plan to run out if things go wrong, Leo realized, as although he did not show the panic on his face, his heart already skipped a beat or two. So, did Hen really send you? Or was that just an excuse to find me? Faye said, as she broke the awkward silence. However, what took Leo aback was the apparent shift in her tone. Gone was the smooth, formal voice she had used in public. Now, her voice was lighter, shriller, more feminine. As if, now that they were alone, she no longer felt the need to maintain her disciplined facade. Yes, it was Major Hen who sent me, but truth be told, I was searching for you ever since you slipped me the note on day one, but I was unable to find you, Leo admitted, as Faye nodded. Well, I was expecting you to find me. And had you been more attentive and looked at my name tag during orientation, perhaps you could have found me sooner, Faye pointed out, as she took a subtle jibe at Leo. I'm glad you are calm, sitting here before me, as I'm sure you have a million questions in your mind. However, before you voice them, let me tell you, I won't be able to answer most of them currently, so don't be disappointed when I refuse to answer most of your doubts. Faye said, as her words caused Leo to clutch his fists in anger. What do you mean you won't be able to answer many of my questions? Who the fuck are you? And where the fuck are my memories? Was what he wanted to scream at the moment. However, knowing full well that aggression was going to get him nowhere, he barely managed to repress his anger. I understand, but instead of me asking the questions, why don't you tell me what you can tell me, so that I don't lose out on any information that you are allowed to give me today, Leo said, as he pushed the ball in her court, somehow holding on to some semblance of patience. A smart choice. We can do it that way too, Faye said, as a soft smile played on her lips, as she began thinking about how best to explain the situation Leo found himself in. For a while, there was pin-drop silence in the room. Then, Faye finally began with the recap. Your real name is Leo Skyshard, your birth planet is Earth, and you were widely known as Earth's best assassin, and Earth's greatest warrior, back when you hunted under your moniker, the Boss, she began, as her lips curved into an unnatural smile when she spoke the last sentence. You were always an arrogant brat. Which was clear in your naming sense. Like, who actually calls themselves, the Boss? That's cringe and stupid. However, you actually had the talent to live up to your ridiculous name. Which I personally find very impressive, she said, as it was clear she had veered off track to make this comment. However, it looked like she could not help herself. Your memory loss was your own decision. Nobody forced you to do it. However, you saw the merits of this process and decided to go through with it for the sake of the mission, and the safety of your family, Faye said, as it was at this point that Leo widened his eyes in surprise and found his patience finally broken, as he couldn't stay silent. Wait, Wait, so you're telling me that I voluntarily gave up my memories and threw myself into a brutal entrance exam where I could have died, all while holding nothing but a vague note in my hand. I can't possibly be that dumb. And for what? What mission? What about my family? Leo's voice shook with frustration, his hands trembling at his sides. None of this made any sense. Instead of answers, Faye had only given him more maddening questions. However, Faye remained unfazed. Like I said, I can't answer most of your questions. And, what mission? And, what about my family? Happened to be two of those questions. She crossed her arms, leaning slightly against the desk. As for, I can't possibly be that dumb, PSSSH. Let's just say it's a blessing you don't remember your past self, because in all my years, I have never met a more arrogant, self-righteous twat than you. Leo's left eye twitched. That was not the response he was expecting. Faye smirked, clearly enjoying his discomfort. We warned you the entrance test would be brutal. But do you know what you said? She tilted her head, her tone turning mocking. And I quote, "The boss laughs in the face of danger." Leo winced as secondhand embarrassment washed over him. Was I really that arrogant? He wondered. But more importantly, why couldn't Faye answer the most important questions? Oh, bullshit, why can't you tell me what the mission is? And why is my family involved in this mess? His patience snapped, anger surging to the surface, as Faye let out a deep sigh. I can't tell you, Leo, because the moment I do, you will no longer be able to remain a regular student at this academy, one whose presence doesn't raise suspicion. Her voice lost its usual teasing edge, turning serious. You might have already figured it out, but the only reason you were able to pass the Academy's psychological evaluation without raising any alarms was because you did not have access to your memories. If you had them, you could have never lied your way past the lie detector, and could never enroll as a student here. However, in case you don't know, those evaluations are not a one-time thing. They happen every 12 months. So you will have to pass another at the end of your first year, and again when you graduate. Leo's stomach sank as Faye continued. If I give you the answers that you seek today, you will have no chance of passing your next psychological evaluation. You will undoubtedly expose yourself. And when that happens, the mission you chose to undertake. She shook her head. It will be over before it even begins. Leo let out a strangled breath, his fingers tangling in his hair. This was impossible. An impossible situation, with no way out. I know it's difficult, however, it's the path you chose for yourself. So please, for now, forget about the why behind this situation, and focus on what you're supposed to do next, Faye said, as Leo buried his head in his hands and stayed there for a while. And what am I supposed to do next? He asked, his head still hanging low, as Faye began explaining his own vision back to him. You are supposed to graduate from this academy as the top student of your class. However, that alone is not your goal. Your goal is to somehow help Rodova clinch the #1 spot in the university rankings once again, toppling Geneva, as you plan to dominate the circuits. You have set that as your goal, because you know that a dominating performance at the circuits will establish you as a household name amongst the top adventurer guilds and clans in the universe, who will recruit you with big promises. And for the sake of the mission, it's absolutely necessary that you find your way into one of the best assassination guilds in the universe. The Black Serpents, Faye said, as Leo finally looked up and made eye contact with her. Please tell me, at least the reason behind all this effort is worth it. Leo asked as Faye nodded sympathetically. You're doing this to save your family, and in a way the whole universe. There is no bigger noble cause. But, if that's not enough, then you're also doing this to save your own life. You're a wanted fugitive, and unless you achieve your goals exactly as you map them, you will be captured and killed in the most brutal of ways, Faye said, as listening to her words Leo fell silent once again. The stakes were massive, almost too big to even fathom. Yet, the only way out was diving even deeper. Giving him no choice but to accept his fate as is. What else can you tell me? I mean, there has to be something, because as things stand I'm going absolutely crazy. I don't even remember how to sense mana, my dreams at night are blank, because there's literally nothing but fog over my memories, and I don't remember anything about how to fight. Before I came here, Su Yong pummeled my face into a pulp, and I'm more than sure that almost everyone else in the academy can too, if I don't regain at least some of my combat potential again, Leo complained, as Mi and Fei gave him another look of sympathy. Well, now this is something that I can help you with, and it was something I was supposed to give you back on the very first day. However, if only someone had bothered to read my name tag, we could have done this much sooner. Fei said, as she stood up from her seat and walked towards her room wall, where she began secretly tempering with the space around it. For a second, Leo found his vision turn hazy, as he could not perceive the world around him at all, until it returned suddenly, when Mi and Fei took her seat before him yet again. What just happened? He mumbled in confusion, as Fei only chuckled to his face but offered no explanation. Then, she put forward the object in her hand, which looked like a simple beanie cap, meant to cover one's ears and head, however, with a lot of electrodes sticking from it. On the side of the beanie was written, Memory Disk Number 4 Techniques and Fights, and just looking at the object, Leo felt a vague sense of familiarity from it. I've seen this before, he said, as Fei nodded. You already have regained memories from Memory Disk Number 1, which was language and math. Without it, you would be no different than a baby who did not understand a word being spoken around it, Fei said, as she gestured for him to put it on. The process of memory transfer is painful, so dig deep and make sure you don't bite your tongue off. Also, while you will regain your knowledge about your existing skill move set and how to execute them, you will still need to practice them a few times before you return to peak proficiency. So you will still have to work on it a bit, Fei warned, as Leo nodded and placed the beanie over his head, while also mentally preparing himself for the pain to come. Ready. Leo barely had time to nod before Fei placed her palm atop the beanie, her fingers spreading across the fabric with practiced precision. A faint hum resonated from the device as she channeled her mana into it, slowly at first, then with increasing intensity. Thin, glowing threads of blue energy seeped from her fingertips, intertwining with the embedded electrodes on the beanie's surface. The moment her mana fully connected with the device, pain. A violent surge tore through Leo's skull, sending his nerves into overdrive. His back arched, fingers digging into the chair's armrests as his entire body locked up. A white-hot pulse hammered through his mind, as if someone had taken a branding iron and was forging memories straight into his consciousness. And then, the floodgates broke open. A torrent of images, sensations, and knowledge crashed into Leo's mind, his consciousness struggling to keep up with the sheer volume of information being forcefully restored. So that's how you circulate mana. So that's how you draw in mana from your surroundings. The first pieces of his past slotted into place, answering fundamental questions about mana control and manipulation before the true depth of his combat knowledge surfaced. Leo had mastered 7 core moves, each designed for a different battlefield scenario. Though vastly different in application, they complemented one another seamlessly, forming the foundation of his assassination skill set. The first technique to resurface was Vanish, a stealth-based move that allowed him to turn completely invisible. The technique worked best when blending into darkness, but Leo had refined it to the point where he could even disappear in broad daylight. By manipulating the mana in his surroundings, he could bend light itself, creating a perfect illusion of non-existence. Then came the Kill Strike, a technique meant to ensure the absolute lethality of an assassination. The move worked by channeling a pulse of volatile mana into an enemy's body upon stabbing them. The moment the blade pierced, the mana detonated inside the target, causing instantaneous internal bleeding and organ failure. While a dagger wound might be survivable, no one could endure an explosion within their own body. Next was the Mirror World, a cloning technique that allowed him to summon up to 100 identical copies of himself. The technique could be used in 2 ways: illusions, which served as perfect decoys to mislead an opponent, or physical clones, which could attack and defend just like the real Leo. The flexibility of the technique made it an invaluable tool in both combat and deception. Following that was Shadow Bind, a restraining move designed to incapacitate targets without the need for lethal force. Using mana-forged chains, Leo could wrap his enemies in powerful bindings, preventing their escape or counterattack. It was an ideal move for control, ensuring his prey had no chance to resist. Next came full counter. It was a skill which helped him send any magical, physical attack coming his way back towards the sender with twice the force. However, executing it needed extreme timing and precision. One slight mistake and the whole move could fail, which was why it needed to be used with caution. Then came Blade Switch, a move that allowed Leo to throw a dagger and instantly teleport to its location. The technique created a blink-like effect, enabling him to reposition in battle with inhuman speed. He could use it to close distances, escape a dangerous situation, or launch an unexpected attack from a new angle. Finally, his mind unlocked the knowledge of parallel processing, a technique that temporarily merged the processing power of his conscious and subconscious minds. This move was responsible for the moments when he perceived the world to slow down around him, giving him an immense advantage in battle. However, it came at an enormous cost. His brain consumed energy 100 times faster than normal to maintain the state, and his muscles had to keep up with the rapid signals, pushing his body beyond its natural limits. The move was his most powerful ace, however, its overuse had the potential to leave him completely incapacitated, a price too high if misused. As all this knowledge resurfaced in Leo's mind, he felt an odd sense of satisfaction, but also immense pain. His skull throbbed violently, as if someone had rammed a drill into his brain, forcing each memory back into place, while his entire body trembled under the weight of the forced recollection. Having years of knowledge being crammed into one's brain within seconds was not a good feeling, and Leo had no question in his mind that a weaker man would have passed out from it. However, he held on, as the final bits of knowledge began to be transferred to his brain, on how to actually make use of his techniques in practical combat scenarios, as he received snippets of himself in past battles where he used the moves in one way or another. Gah! He screamed, as a mouthful of spittle escaped his face, landing on the floor below. He was approaching his limits, and quickly felt like he could not take any more knowledge for the day anymore. "We are 96% done, just hold on for a few more seconds," Mian Fei told him, as listening to her voice Leo somehow held on till the end, as the device finally powered off, having completed its function. "Good job not passing out. Some of your memories would have been lost forever if you did," she said, as she removed the steaming beanie from his head, and ruffled his hair in joy. "Lost forever. How about you warn me about such things before we start the procedure next time?" Leo snapped back, angry, as Fei let out a prideful smile. "So, did you get the knowledge of your moveset back? What do you think of it?" Fei asked, as for a moment Leo said nothing and only gestured towards his throat, asking for water. Fei rolled her eyes, however, fetched it for him at once. And it was only after he drank some and recovered, that Leo began answering her question. "The skill set is balanced for movement, creativity and attack, however, I don't know a single defensive maneuver. If push comes to shove, I have no healing abilities or defensive moves that could save my life in a pinch, making my fighting style offensively skewed," Leo judged, as Fei nodded in agreement with his assessment. "Glad you can see it now. Because, I already know what the previous you would have said when asked about it," Fei said, as she chuckled to herself as if reminiscing about an old joke. What would the old me say?" Leo asked, his curiosity piqued, as Fei only chuckled louder looking at the clueless him. "What else? The old you would say. Defense is for losers who get hit. I'm the boss, I just don't get hit," Fei replied, as Leo once again frowned deeply. His previous self sounded like an enigma, and Leo could not even begin to imagine what sort of a life he had lived to grow into such an arrogant prick. However, while it sounded impractical, he was also secretly impressed by his past arrogant self, as clearly it had somehow managed to become the best assassin on planet Earth. "All right. Your next class starts in 12 minutes, you better get a move on. Also, remember, you won't be able to use your skills instantly. Expect failures in the first few days. You need practice to return to your best, so don't bank on it for immediate fights. Also, If anyone asks, just tell them it was Instructor Faye who helped unlock some bits of my memory. However, don't tell them about the beanie, Faye instructed, as she unlocked the biometric door once again and showed Leo the exit. I'm your caretaker here, Skyshard, and while I'll help you as best I can, it's going to have to be you that does all the heavy lifting. You must show promise in combat, and you must place at the top of your class, because if you don't, all your sacrifices up till now will be for naught, Faye reminded, as she gave him one last good slap on his back before sending him on his way to the next class. As Leo stepped out of Faye's room, his hair slightly tousled and a subtle smirk lingering on his face, the last thing he expected was to run into Professor David. The professor was headed towards his dorm room after finishing his lecture, his expression neutral, until his gaze landed on Leo. Skyshard. David's voice carried a note of surprise, his eyes flickering from Leo's disheveled appearance to the door he had just stepped out of. Leo could almost see the gears turning in the professor's mind, piecing together an entirely incorrect scenario. However, he met his gaze nonetheless. Professor, Leo said, as he walked past him, entirely ignoring the tension hanging in the air. But as he brushed past, he could swear he heard David curse under his breath. Leo didn't need to read minds to know what the professor was thinking. The man had clearly jumped to the worst conclusion possible, assuming that a teacher had offered him sexual favors in exchange for being acquainted with his monarch-level talent. It was ridiculous, unfounded, but Leo had neither the time nor the patience to care. With only 12 minutes before his next class, his focus was elsewhere. Returning to the practical combat arena, Leo walked with a renewed sense of confidence about himself. Although his conversation with Faye had not gone entirely as he hoped it would, in some ways, it had turned out better than he ever could have imagined. He now knew that his memory loss was something voluntary and not something imposed forcibly upon him, and although there was a possibility that Faye was lying and making things up, something about her demeanor and how she talked about his past self made Leo trust him. Today, having talked to her, Leo found out about his goal in this academy and his reason for coming here, and that alone felt much better than the confused state he found himself in up until yesterday. Up till yesterday, he had no clue why he was here, or who put him here, or what was his end game. And although many of these questions still remain unanswered, at least now he knew his short-term goals. 1. He had to get stronger and somehow top the first-year rankings. 2. He had to be selected for the academy team representing them in the circuits and participate in that competition. 3. He had to shine at the circuits and hopefully help Rodova overturn Geneva's rank, as it would be an achievement big enough to be noticed by the universe's best assassin guild, the Black Serpents. Which eventually brought him to his final goal for having joined this academy, which was finding a way into the Black Serpents. For now, he had no clue as to why he needed to join the Black Serpents, or why the only route to joining them had to go through the Rodova Military Academy. However, just having the knowledge of what he was supposed to do felt enough for now. Meanwhile, within the teacher's dorm room, Mi and Faye, aka Mu Fan, slumped against the wall devoid of all strength after Leo left her room. She had kept her act together, and behaved all tough around him till she eventually pushed him out. However, the truth was she was absolutely exhausted. The mana required for the memory transfer was not something just anyone could handle. The process was actually supposed to take place in a specialized machine that was powered by several high-purity mana crystals. However, Mu Fan did it by hand for the sake of Leo. Stupid boy got all beat up today by Su Yang. Why does he pick fights he can't win? Doesn't he understand that his body is precious? Faye thought, as he cursed Leo's poor decision-making under her breath. Today, she had given him a sense of purpose and a goal to work towards, and while she had not given him all the answers he sought, she had pointed him in the right direction. You must enroll into the Black Serpents, Skyshard, for if you don't, there is no hope for you to become the next timeless assassin, Faye murmured, as she weakly recalled the reason behind all this trouble. The reason behind Leo enrolling into Rodova Military Academy. The carefully crafted plan, aimed at seamlessly helping him achieve what no one else before him had. The reason was quite embarrassing for the evil cult, for they were supposed to be the guardians of the ways of the timeless assassin, the protector of his legacy. However, it was because of their inadequacies that Leo had to take this difficult path today. The evil cult was meant to be the guardian of the timeless assassin's legacy, the preserver of his techniques, the gatekeeper of the knowledge that allowed a warrior to ascend beyond mortality. And yet, they had failed. Their last hope, the strongest dragon candidate they had ever nurtured, a warrior who had once stood on the precipice of greatness, had fallen. Killed not fighting a war of justice, nor by an unforeseen catastrophe, but by the guild master of the Black Serpents. That battle had been a turning point. Not only had the evil cult lost their most promising candidate, but the Black Serpents had taken from his corpse something invaluable, something that should have never left the hands of the cult. A divine rank skill scroll. A relic of the original timeless assassin, containing one of his core techniques, a move so crucial that without it, no successor could ever hope to become the next timeless assassin. It was a fatal bottleneck, a wall that could not be bypassed. No matter how much talent the next dragon possessed, no matter how deep their understanding of the timeless assassin's arts, they would never reach the pinnacle without that skill in their arsenal. And now, that scroll sat behind the most impenetrable defenses in the universe. The Black Serpent Guild was not just a collection of elite assassins, it was the universe's premier assassin guild, an organization that had solidified its place at the very top of the underworld hierarchy, by having deep ties to all 6 great clans and the universal government. Their vaults were legendary, rumored to be guarded by an ever-changing security protocol, layers of spatial locks, and a force of assassins that had never known failure. And while over the years, the evil cult had launched dozens of attempts to retrieve what was stolen, every mission they launched had inevitably ended in disaster. Each infiltration team was wiped out. Every direct assault was crushed as the cult simply found no way in. Not through force, not through stealth, not through any method they had used before. Which meant that if they wanted to retrieve the skill scroll, if they wanted to see a new timeless assassin to rise again, they needed a new approach. One that would allow their agent to walk freely within the guild's walls. One that would not raise suspicion. One that would let them strike from within. But that was easier said than done. In a world where background checks ran deep, where major organizations conducted psychological evaluations and lie detection procedures on every new recruit, infiltrating the Black Serpents was impossible for anyone with even the slightest connection to the evil cult. Even a single hidden memory of the mission could be fatal, as no one could join that organization with fabricated pasts or forged documents, as the guild's security measures would expose them long before they ever got close to the armory. Which left them with only one possible entry point: the grassroots level. Unlike other recruitment methods, the inter-school circuits were one of the few ways the Black Serpents scouted new talent without prior affiliation checks, as they expected the reputed academies to have already done that bit. Hence, those who dominated the circuits, those who stood out among the most promising young assassins in the universe, were offered a chance to join. Making it the only way to join without triggering suspicion. And that was why Leo Skyshard had come to Rodova Military Academy. That was why he had erased his own memories. A clear background. A blank slate. No affiliations. No ties to the evil cult. A perfect candidate. This wasn't just about gaining strength. This was about building a cover story. About proving himself as an exceptional talent while operating within the Righteous Alliance framework. About ascending the ranks of the Academy without any traces of his true allegiance. Only after cementing himself as one of the best would he receive an invitation. Only after earning his way into the Black Serpents would he finally get his chance. Once inside, he would steal back what was rightfully his. And when that day came, when the scroll was back in their hands, he would return to the evil cult as their next dragon. The next candidate to become the timeless assassin. But until that day arrived, he could never know the full truth. For in this game of shadows, ignorance was both his greatest shield and his deadliest curse. Practical combat grounds, Rodova Military Academy. As Leo stepped into the practical combat grounds once again, sporting a bruised face and a slightly swollen eye, his physical condition immediately became the center of everyone's attention. Whispers rippled through the training grounds, as the elite class students tried to theorize what had happened to him. Since it was common knowledge that both he and Su Yong had been kicked out of Professor David's class, many assumed the two had clashed afterward, with Leo ending up on the losing end. While the others speculated that he had foolishly provoked a senior or an instructor, which would be in line with his freakish personality. However, as if completely unaffected by the gossip around him, Leo stood tall. His posture was proud, his expression unshaken, as a subtle but unmistakable confidence radiated from him. The very air around him felt different now compared to just this morning, as he seemed to no longer fear the opinions of the students around him. With the knowledge of his combat techniques restored, something deep inside him had shifted. It was almost like a sliver of his natural arrogance, his brash, unshakable presence, was creeping back, as his eyes looked at the surrounding students more as underlings rather than peers. The change was subtle, but significant. Just this morning, he stood amongst the class lineup in a spot where he would draw the least amount of eyes, with his shoulders slouched and his eyes gazing at something distant. It was almost like he subconsciously avoided eye contact, since he did not have the guts to pick a fight. But now, he stood tall, shoulders squared, meeting the stares of those who dared look at him, challenging them with nothing but his presence, as he turned into a full-blown menace. With his combat knowledge restored, he feared no one. And it reflected in his attitude, with Mu Ryan being one of the first ones to notice this change in him. Whoa, 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 whoa. What the hell happened to you, big bro? Where did you suddenly pick up so much swagger from? She asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. However, Leo simply shrugged her away. I've always been this way. His voice came out deeper than expected, catching even him off guard. Mu Ryan narrowed her eyes. Nah, something definitely happened between Professor David's class and now. You feel way too overbearing for it to be nothing major. Her gaze flickered towards Su Yong, who stood off to the side, arms folded, a deep frown on his face. He, too, was staring at Leo, but with a hazy, confused expression that looked like it belonged to a disillusioned lover who had just had a messy breakup. And Mu Ryan followed his gaze and then gasped dramatically for maximum humor points. Yep, you and Su Yong just had sex after class. That's the theory I'm running with. My only question is, she paused for effect, smirking, who was top? Leo let out an involuntary chuckle before pushing her away. Wicked. The little one definitely had a wicked sense of humor. And while Leo didn't dislike that about her, he found himself more alarmed by her uncanny ability to observe and discern things others would overlook. She had instantly pieced together that he might have ties to the Mu clan and had lost his memories, something that wasn't public knowledge. And now, with just a glance, she had noticed the shift in his demeanor before anyone else. That was dangerous. All right, class. I want pin-drop silence. A deep, commanding voice cut through the chatter as Major Hen stepped forward, taking the center stage. I am Major Hen Bespoke, and for the next 4 weeks, I will be your practical combat instructor. Unlike your regular classes, which are taught by fixed faculty, your practical combat training will be conducted by rotating military instructors. Each instructor will train you in different methodologies, ensuring that you receive a broad spectrum of combat exposure. My method of training is simple, which is that I want you to fight amongst each other as much as possible. I want you to face as many opponents as possible, to gain first-hand knowledge of their fighting styles and learn how different types of warriors approach combat. No two swordsmen fight the same. No two assassins move alike. Facing dozens of different opponents daily will give you the experience necessary to determine the best strategies to counter a variety of fighters. Adaptability is key, and that is the foundation of my class. Here's how it will work. Each of you will be assigned a number. You will then rotate through matchups, facing every other number in this class at least once. Each fight will conclude in one of 3 ways. A tie if no decisive result is reached within 2.5 minutes. A win if you disarm or incapacitate your opponent. A loss if you are the one disarmed or incapacitated. Hen's tone remained firm and unwavering as he continued. Scoring will be simple. 0 points for a draw. -1 for a loss. +2 for a win. Once all of you have fought every opponent at least once, we will hold weekly leaderboard matchups every Sunday. The top 10 rankers will participate in an exhibition match, where the rest of the class will observe and learn. I will personally critique those matches, breaking down your mistakes, analyzing your movements, and teaching you how to improve. That will be the most informative part of this class. Hen's gaze swept over the crowd, his words laced with a deliberate intensity. If you have any intention of qualifying for the circuits as a first year, your performance in these leaderboard matches is critical. At the end of my 4 weeks, I will be submitting 3 names to Principal Ulrich, my personal recommendations for the circuits. And while my endorsement alone won't guarantee selection, it will carry significant weight in your candidacy. So, if you want to make a name for yourself in the military inter-academy circuits, if you want to be noticed by the strongest and most powerful organizations in the universe, fight like hell. Claw your way to every win you can get. Hen's fists clenched as he spoke, his voice carrying an unmistakable edge of challenge, an unspoken dare for them to rise to the occasion as he tried to rile up the heat within everyone's young blood. And it worked out well, for as Leo glanced around, he could see the shift in everyone's expressions. His fellow students' expressions had hardened. Determination. Hunger. Every single one of them wanted this. The circuits were the golden ticket. The one chance to be scouted and recruited by the universe's most elite forces. And if they had to fight, bleed, and break bones to earn a recommendation spot, then so be it. Sir, Zhang Jiyu will be the one to get that recommendation, sir. Shouted a candidate, who declared his desire to win like a moron, which immediately painted him as a target for the rest of the class, and even pissed Leo off. Like hell you would, the mission requires me to qualify for the circuits, and if this recommendation can help me do so, then I'm not letting a single one of you past me. Zhang Jiyu of the Jiyu clan. I'm gonna break your bones when we meet in battle, Leo thought, as he coldly marked the loudmouth as a personal project. Leo Skyshard, number 1, Su Yang, number 2, Mu Shen, number 3. Major Hen's voice carried through the combat grounds as he assigned numbers to all students based on their enrollment ranks, keeping the process straightforward and without any unnecessary complications. The list continued until Hen reached the final number. And then, without a pause, he moved to the matchups. First flight, number 1 versus number 35, Zone 1. Number 2 versus number 34, Zone 2, he read, as he assigned everyone a combat partner at once. After hearing the number of his opponent, Leo's gaze shifted briefly. He had no idea who number 35 was, but his opponent clearly knew who he was. From among the crowd, a girl was already staring at him. Eventually, as Leo made eye contact with her, she began walking toward him at a casual pace, stretching her arm out to introduce herself. "Hello, I'm Sophia Ven and I will be your first opponent today," she said as Leo accepted the handshake but responded in a tone laced with detached arrogance. "You already know who I am," he said, as Sophia smiled at his remark, tilting her chin up ever so slightly, as if trying to meet his gaze on even ground. But it was nothing but a poor attempt at bravery, and unfortunately for her, Leo saw straight through it. She tried too hard to appear confident, although she was not feeling it. And while she somehow managed to maintain a straight face, the rest of her body betrayed her resolve. The tension in her shoulders. The slight imbalance in her stance. The way her fingers curled just a bit too tightly before she let go of the handshake, told Leo that she was very nervous to face him. Whether it was his reputation as the number 1 student, or his freakish performance this morning while training that scared her, Leo had no clue. However, looking at her body language, he felt sure that she was indeed afraid to face him. Being scared of your opponent means you've already lost half the fight, Leo thought, as he purposefully bore his gaze down on her, trying to look even more imposing, as he tried his best to intimidate her even more. However, before he could properly pressure her, Major Hen's voice rang out once again, saving his opponent from unnecessary psychological pressure. Listen up, Hen said, as all attention snapped back to him. You will each participate in 5 consecutive matches before being allowed any rest. Once your match ends, you will rotate one zone to the left and take on your next opponent immediately. This will go on until you complete a total of 10 fights today. The weight of his words settled over the field. Each fight is a maximum of 2.5 minutes. If no decisive victory is reached, it will be ruled as a draw. There will be no breaks between rotations, recover as you fight, or fall behind. And the break after the 5th match will only be 10 minutes, where consumption of any potion is not allowed. A murmur rippled through the students, some whispering complaints, others barely concealing their frustration. However, Leo did neither. In fact, he welcomed the format with open arms. Fighting 5 opponents consecutively without rest would test his endurance, his sharpness, his ability to stay dominant under fatigue. And although it would be tough, he desperately wanted to know where his limits lay. Which was why he was grateful to Hen for pushing him in such a demanding regimen. Assistants, take your positions. Hen commanded at the end, as at his command, a squad of instructors stepped forward. Unlike the professors, these men and women were not mere educators. They were soldiers. Their role wasn't just to referee. They were here to enforce discipline, to observe and to ensure the safety of all participants. Each assistant took command of a designated zone before calling out the cadets assigned to fight in their zone. Zone 1, number 1 and 35. A male assistant called, as Leo and Sophia answered his call, moving towards that particular fighting area. Beside them, Su Yong took his own position in Zone 2, while Mu Shen was further left in Zone 3. The entire training ground had been divided into smaller battle zones, each outlined with thick white boundary lines. The space wasn't large, but it was just enough to engage in a close-range battle and to maneuver a few steps. It was designed in a way where running away or stalling for time became impossible, pushing cadets to go for wins, rather than gambling for a tie. Number 1, stop here. Number 35, go there, the assistant pointed, as he assigned both Leo and Sophia a starting spot within the marked area. Standard combat rules apply to this fight, he began, as alternating his gaze between both cadets he explained the rules once. Protective gear is mandatory. No strikes to vital organs. No maiming or crippling blows. Forced out of bounds equals a loss. Referee's decision is final. He explained as he handed Leo and Sophia their protective gear, which included light padding for the chest, forearms, and legs, along with a helmet. Ensuring that both candidates had sufficient protection to prevent crippling injuries. Leo strapped his armor on without a second thought, completing the process quickly, while across from him, Sophia did the same, but took much longer. It looked like she took the extra time to make sure that she was padded up precisely and so that she did not get hit on her vitals, as she subconsciously seemed to be preparing herself for a crushing defeat, and was only hoping to make it out of round 1 without any major injuries. PFF'd. Weakling, Leo thought disappointedly, as although he could accept a weaker opponent losing to him in a fair fight, he somehow had no sympathy for weak-minded warriors that threw the fight before it ever began. To become a warrior, one had to become a mentality monster first, and it looked like she did not have the mentality of a predator within her. Eventually, she did finish gearing up, as she looked up at Leo once again, this time with an unsure smirk on her lips. So, the famous monarch-level talent is my first opponent. Unfortunately, you will lose your very first fight, she said, her voice cracking slightly, as the fear was evident on her face. Leo said nothing. He merely scoffed at her meek behavior before shaking his head, as the referee introduced the weapons tray. Coincidentally, both Leo and Sophia were assassins. However, while Leo chose to fight with daggers, Sophia preferred scythes as her weapon of choice. It was not the usual choice for an assassin, however, this was exactly what Hen wanted from this combat class, which was to expose students to all kinds of opponents. Swippy. Swippy. Picking 2 of them up, Sophia spun the curved blade in her palms, before rubbing them against one another to produce small sparks, as she smiled in satisfaction. Apparently, holding a weapon in her hand finally gave her the courage to look Leo in the eye, who felt equally confident after gripping a pair of daggers in his palms. "Fighters ready?" the referee asked once both had chosen their weapons, as both Leo and Sophia nodded to show their approval. "Begin," he declared, as Sophia charged at her command, only to be bamboozled, when Leo disappeared before her very eyes within a split second. "Begin." The moment Sophia heard the command, she sprang into action, charging straight toward Leo. She knew that if she did not seize control of the battle now, right when it had just begun, she might never get the chance to do it again later. Since Leo was the #1 ranked cadet in the elite class as per comprehensive evaluation, Sophia fully expected him to be faster and stronger than her. However, when she saw that he favored a dagger as his primary weapon of choice, she recognized an opportunity to potentially create an opening. Leo's daggers were barely 12 inches long, and when added to his arm reach, his maximum attack range reached about 46 inches. In contrast, her scythe measured 20 inches, and with her 30-inch arm reach, she had a peak attack range of 50 inches, a full 4 inches longer than her opponent's. This meant that she had a range advantage over him, which when coupled with her skill move, Accelerated Slash, might just give her the edge she needed to win. It was a very small difference, but in a fight like this, every inch counted. "Okay Sophia, you will go in and place a vertical slash, forcing him to dodge left. However, the moment he moves, you will activate the skill, and take him by surprise. It's an opening sequence you have done countless times before, and maybe it can work on him too," Sophia thought, as she narrowed her gaze. However, before she could execute her thoughts. Before she could even raise her scythe to attack him, Leo disappeared before her very eyes, without leaving so much of a trace in the air. What? Where did he go? She wondered in panic, as she looked to the left, then to the right, and finally over her head. She expected an attack to come flying in from any side at any time, as her senses went into hyperdrive. However, the expected attack never came. 1, 2, 3. 3 painful seconds passed, as sweat beads began to form on her forehead. She no longer had any sense of her opponent's movements, as having spun around thrice in these 3 seconds, she no longer knew where Leo was supposed to be. She had spun, because she felt a constant fear of being stabbed in her back. However, no matter how many times she turned, she simply could not spot her opponent. "Damn it, where are you?" she finally shouted in frustration, as at that moment, she felt someone suddenly swipe at her feet as she lost her balance and was brought to the floor with a sickening thud. Thud. At this point, Leo suddenly reappeared, a dagger pointed at her throat, as he ended the bout from start to finish in under 10 seconds. "Please don't hurt me." Sophia's eyes conveyed this message, as they turned slightly teary and afraid. However, Leo did not care. For him, resisting the urge to plunge a dagger in her back and ending the fight without inflicting any major injury on his opponent was already mercy enough on his part, and he had no interest in showing any more. "Work on the perception skill that Professor Powell distributed today. You need it a lot," Leo advised as he walked away, with the assistant declaring him to be the winner. "Winner, +2 points, Cadet number 1. The assistant announced, as he nodded in acknowledgement of Leo's skill, prompting Leo to nod back. Apparently, only 2 cadets had finished their fights within the first 10 seconds, and those 2 were him and Su-Yong. As Leo looked across to his battle zone, he found Su-Yong staring back at him, as a maniacal smile played out on his face. He said nothing. However, the excitement and the pure elation on his face conveyed the entire story of what he felt at this moment. "Not bad, Skyshard." Leo could almost hear his voice praising him in his head, as he grinned back, folding his arms as he boldly made eye contact. Leo felt it too, the goosebumps crawling under his skin, as he felt the growing urge to fight Su-Yong yet again. Just a couple hours ago, he had been beaten black and blue by the guy. However, after getting his combat memories back, Leo felt his body itching for round 2, as he strongly felt that the outcome between their fight would be different if they were to clash again now. On a second thought, Leo realized that it might not be a great idea to jump into a rematch just yet, as although he executed the move Vanish perfectly in this fight, without facing any hiccups, there was still a chance he could face some challenges while trying to recreate some of his other moves. It was an odd sensation, for although Mian Fei had warned him that it would take a while for him to recall and perform his combat skills, Leo found himself capable of recreating Vanish on his first try, which immediately boosted his confidence. Initially, he felt jittery when he began circulating mana within his body to activate Vanish. However, once he started, it was almost like he did not even need to consciously think on what he was doing, as his brain completed the rest of the process automatically. It was almost like he had performed the move 1,000 times while training, and now he only needed to initiate the process before muscle memory took over and his body did the rest. And while he was not sure if this was the case for Vanish alone, or for all his skills, he did not wish to fight Su Yang again, until he found out. Just you wait, Su Yang, I'm going to return every hit you landed on my face tenfold in the coming days, Leo thought, as the grin on his face widened while staring Su Yang down. At this moment, both of them knew that Leo was on his way to regaining his peak battle form, and although he had some distance left to cover, both were genuinely stoked to see him on the path to quick improvement. Alright, time's up. Everyone shifts one battle zone to their left. Number 1 will go to Zone 2. Number 2 will go to Zone 3. Number 34 will go to Zone 1. And number 35 will move to Zone 35. Major Hen declared once the first 2.5 minutes were over, as everyone quickly shifted to the next battle zone, where they encountered their second opponent. Greetings, I'm Zhang Jiyu, and I shall be taking the top spot from you in the class rankings very soon, said Leo's second opponent, as Leo's eyes beamed with joy when he introduced himself. This was the same guy who had shouted boldly that he was going to win it all, when Major Hen was explaining the rules, and he had done the same once again when he introduced himself now. Ag, so you're Zhang Jiyu, Leo said, as he pretended to have heard his name before. Yes, I'm Zhang Jiyu. Have you perhaps kept an eye on me as a rival? He asked, his eyes shining brightly as he took his battle stance. Yes, let me be honest, Zhang Jiyu, I must tell you precisely how I feel about you before we fight. Leo began, as he drew in his opponent's curiosity with his words. The truth is, I don't give a fuck about you, Miang Chu, Leo said, deliberately pronouncing his name wrong, as the expression in his eyes turned stone cold. Begin, the referee announced at that moment, as it was Leo this time who took the initiative to charge first. The moment the referee's hand dropped to signal the start of the match, Leo immediately exploded forward, a menacing glare in his eyes. Woosh. Zhang Jiyu barely had time to react before Leo was already on him. Leo didn't use any fancy techniques for this fight, not because he did not have confidence in performing them, but simply because he did not need to. His combat knowledge and experience ran deeper than just skill moves and weapons mastery, as his battle IQ was quite high too. At his best, he did not need to rely on any fancy moves to defeat his opponent, as more likely than not, he could usually read them like an open book. Not today, Zhang Jiyu declared as he saw Leo descending upon him from the top, as he swung his sword in a quick, practiced arc, activating a mana-infused slash aimed straight at Leo's ribs. But Leo read it like an open book. He didn't dodge. He didn't flinch. Instead, he leaned back while in midair, and calmly stepped on his opponent's sword, mid-slash, to perform a backflip. What? Zhang Jiyu mouthed in disbelief, as his brain could not comprehend the sheer reflexes needed to time a backflip off an ongoing sword slash. However, that momentary distraction became his undoing, as Leo landed a blow to the top of his head before landing. Goo! Zhang Jiyu said dazedly, as his vision doubled and his balance became shaky. Where? He mouthed in confusion, swinging his sword wildly, as he could not locate Leo in his dazed state. I'm right here, you bum, Leo said, as he tapped on his shoulders lightly, only for Zhang Jiyu to turn with a panic, as Leo punched him square on the nose. Bam! Zhang Jiyu staggered back, his nose bone broken by the blow, as a steady stream of blood began trickling down his face. Ouch! Ouch! Ah! He screamed, clutching his nose with his free hand, as once again he took his eyes off Leo, giving him the chance to go on the offensive yet again. His next strike came instantly, a sweeping backhand across Zhang Gu's jaw, as he floored him to the ground. Thud! Zhang Jiyu laid flat on the ground, his brain a concussed mess, as he simply could not make sense of the world around him anymore. Stomp! Stomping ruthlessly on his face, Leo kicked his broken nose again and again, disfiguring it completely, until the referee forcibly stepped in to stop the fight and protect Cadet's safety. Fight over. Winner, Cadet number 1, +2 points. He declared, as it was only then that Leo walked away from Zhang Jiyu, but not before spitting on the ground beside his face. New number 1, my ass. Leo scoffed, turning his back on Zhang Jiyu and walking away, making sure the humiliation of this defeat would burn itself into his opponent's memory. In a way, Zhang Jiyu was extremely lucky. Lucky that the academy had rules. Lucky that Leo had been forced to hold himself back, for if it weren't for the academy's restrictions, Leo knew in his heart that Zhang Jiyu would not have walked away from this fight, he would have crawled. And the worst part, Leo understood now, that he would not have felt a shred of guilt, even if he did go that far. For all his earlier doubts about himself, about his true nature, about who he was before he lost his memory, the answer was now becoming clearer to him with every passing moment. Deep down, Leo knew the truth. It was like a reflection that had been staring back at him from the start. However, he was just not ready back then to acknowledge it. However, he felt like he was ready to embrace it now. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't some noble warrior. At his core, he was a killer, cold, calculating, and merciless toward anything that annoyed him. But he wasn't a mindless murderer. He did not kill simply for pleasure, nor did he crave destruction for its own sake. But patience, mercy, he had very little of that to spare, especially against people that he disliked or had no attachment to. And it was surprising how hard it was for him to be attached to anyone, as although Mu Ryan was a sort of friend for him now, whose company he did not dislike. He still had no question in his mind that if tomorrow, he somehow found himself facing Mu Ryan in a fight where only one of them could walk away, he would kill her without hesitation, and he wouldn't lose a wink of sleep over it. He simply did not care for her enough to care about her life or death, and although the very thought of killing an acquaintance should have unsettled him, if he were frank to himself, it didn't. If anything, it comforted him instead, as a dark corner of his brain told him to be proud of this non-attachment, for it made him a harder target to go after. However, on the other hand, the logical part of him recognized that this level of detachment, this raw, unwavering ruthlessness, was probably not a good thing. Sympathy, compassion, and empathy, those were the things that made a human, human. They were what separated men from monsters, what differentiated warriors from beasts. But the more Leo thought about it, the harder it became to convince himself that he should care. Because the truth was, he didn't. There was no guilt, no hesitation about his nature in his head anymore, and instead of questioning it, he embraced it. Why should he feel apologetic for his nature? He was a hunter, not prey. A predator, not some weak, bleeding heart fool pretending to be something he wasn't. And the more he came to terms with that, the more he liked it. He wasn't even back to his peak yet. He had no grand achievements to boast about, no towering reputation to lean on. Yet, still, he found his natural arrogance slowly creeping back. Not because of what he had done and accomplished already in the academy, but because of what he knew he could do. Damn, I guess I finally understand why me and Faye called my previous self impossibly arrogant. The boss. That name sounded cringe to me when I first heard it, but I low-key like it now. I definitely feel like the boss, with my combat instincts back, and if I feel this better with just my combat memories back. Just how would I really feel when I had all my memories back? Leo wondered, as he clutched his palm into a fist and stared at it with passion. Thump thump. The thumping pulse in his veins was demanding that he fight more. The joy of humiliating his opponents. He wanted to feel it more. The elation of stomping an opponent's nose out. He wanted to feel it more. God damn it. How long before the next fight starts? I'm already tired of looking at this bum's face, Leo said impatiently, as the referee kept looking at his clock, waiting for the timer to hit 0, before he gave the command to switch. Leo tore through the next few fights with ease, overwhelming his opponents with sheer dominance. He did not need to use any flashy techniques or skill moves, in fact he did not even consider using them after the second fight. Not because he did not want to test out his newly recalled skill moves, but simply because he found his opponents to not be at his level. His opponents were skilled and strong. Yes, and the gap between them was not in terms of raw power. In fact, most of the students of the elite class were at par with him in terms of speed, strength and endurance, with some even being stronger in a few areas. But the difference in their understanding of combat. That was a chasm the students in this class could not hope to cross in a short time. Leo had a sea of combat information in his brain. Experience so deep and rich, that gave him a way out of almost any perceivable combat situation at this level. Which was in stark contrast to most of his opponents, who were young elites, raised in noble families, that were although groomed through rigorous physical training regimens since childhood, still lacked knowledge of actual practical combat. They had sparring experience, polished techniques, and textbook perfect form. But they had never fought for their lives. And it showed. Their movements, while technically sound, lacked killer instinct. They still treated combat like a sparring match, measured, predictable, hesitant. None of them knew how to properly leverage their weapon advantage, like a proper seasoned warrior should. Leo used daggers, the shortest melee weapon on the battlefield. Hence by all logic, his opponents, wielding longer swords and polearms, should have had the reach advantage. But they had no idea how to press that advantage. For they lacked the fundamental understanding of how human anatomy worked, and what exactly was the most lethal range of their weapons. Every weapon had a kill zone, the area where it could dish out the maximum damage, and it was fundamental for a warrior to fight and hold their opponent within this kill zone, so that at any opening shown, they could move in for the kill. However, the noble-borns did not understand this concept as well as Leo did. And while Leo did not remember his teacher, nor did he recall what kind of life he had lived up until now to possess such a deep understanding of combat, he still understood how to render his opponent's range advantage useless. He knew that if he slipped past their guard and fought at extreme close range, separated by no more than half an arm's length, their ranged weapons turned powerless. The human elbow cannot bend backward, making a sword useless at that range, simply because one did not have enough space to swing it with any real force that could produce damage. And Leo gave them no space. He stuck to them like a shadow, fighting in such tight quarters that their own weapons became a liability. Meanwhile, his daggers, small, compact, and designed for close quarters combat, became instruments of pure destruction. It was a simple trick. Basic. But for these pampered nobles, who had never fought in real battle, it was an unsolvable puzzle. They didn't know how to create distance. They didn't know how to reset the fight and regain control. And because of that, they lost. Every single one. Asterisk 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 asterisk. 1 hour later. An hour later, Leo defeated his 10th and final opponent without so much as breaking a sweat, as he became one of only 4 students in the class to complete the day with an unbeaten record alongside Su Yang, Mu Shen and Tivo Dracos. To be fair, he had only faced the lower percentile of the elite class today, with his matchups being the easiest ones on paper. However, completing the day with an unbeaten record still did well to cement his legacy as one of this year's strongest students, as if anyone had any lingering doubts about his true potential, they no longer possessed those ideas anymore. Fuck, look at Skyshard, he's not even breathing heavy. He's completely fine after winning 10 fights. There's not a bead of sweat on his forehead, nor a scratch on his body. Even Su Yang has a scratch on his face, but Skyshard is untouched. Freak. Skyshard is a goddamn freak, I faced him in combat for my 7th fight, and he completely outclassed me without ever needing to activate a single skill. Fighting him felt like fighting an immovable wall. He's a true freak unlike anything I have ever seen before. Murmurs began to spread around the class regarding Leo's performance in this first class, as looking around, there was not a single student who had managed to come out of this class unscathed, except for him. Most of the students had suffered significant injuries. Broken bones, bruised ribs, dislocated joints, swollen eyes. However, even those who were good at defense and did not pick up any major injury, looked to be completely exhausted after 10 fights, as they found themselves collapsed on the floor, their chest heaving heavily, while Leo stood tall, unbothered. Unlike these fools who went all out in every fight and expended every bit of mana in their bodies, Leo never went all out, nor did he use too many skills, as he fought the fights with his brain and conserved most of his energy by not performing any useless movements. He felt like he could easily go for an hour more before his breathing became unsteady, as just this much action was not enough to tickle his bones. Alright class, that's it for today. I hope you have gained a lot of new insights by facing your fellow classmates today. We will repeat this process tomorrow, day after and the day after tomorrow as well, before holding a Rankers exhibition match on Sunday. If you think your performance today was not up to the mark, then I suggest that before you go to bed today, you think about your fights, how they played out and what you could have done differently to avoid a defeat. Introspection is the most important aspect for improvement, but it's not something that can be taught and only something that can be experienced through enlightenment. Anyways, that's it for you all today. Dismissed, Major Hen said, as he turned on his heel and walked out of the practical combat grounds, leaving the students rolling on the floor to their own devices. Big brother, you were on fire today. I never knew you could move like that, Mu Ryan said, as soon as the class ended, as she immediately rushed beside Leo and grabbed him by the arm. You're going to face me tomorrow, please go easy on me. I don't want a bruised cheek, she said while pouting, as she tried to appear cute and appeal for leniency. If you don't want to end up with a bruised face, then just throw your weapon to the ground as soon as the match starts, declaring a forfeit. If not, then don't blame me for what comes next, Leo replied amusedly, as he gave her the evil side eye. Mean. Big brother is a meanie, Mu Ryan complained as she feebly hit him on his arms, causing Leo to burst out in laughter. An interaction that did not go unnoticed by the class. Rodova Military Academy, Tactical Training Grounds, B9. The final class of the day after practical combat was Scouting, Movement, and Planning, an Assassin Branch exclusive course that Leo had to take alongside regular class students. It was a 90% theoretical lecture with a few practical demonstrations conducted by Army specialists, nothing too physically demanding, which was a relief, considering that nearly everyone who arrived for the lecture looked half dead after and during the first day of hellish training at the Rodova Military Academy. On the first day, the lieutenant conducting the class outlined the importance of mission planning and introduced 3 core rules that every assassin had to follow when preparing for an operation. 1. Scout. 2. Verify. 3. Plan. The first thumb rule, scouting, was the foundation of every mission. Before an assassin ever lifted a blade, before a single step was taken toward the target, scouting had to be done. A poorly scouted mission was a mission doomed to fail. The more an assassin knew about their target, their habits, routines, security measures, and the layout of their environment, the less room there was for unexpected surprises. Scouting was not just about watching a target from the shadows. It was about gathering every possible detail that could be used to ensure success. How many guards were stationed at a given time? Did the target have a predictable schedule? Were there alternative exits if the main escape route was blocked? What terrain or structures could be used to an assassin's advantage? These were questions that needed clear answers before any plan could be formed. A well-protected target required a different approach than one who was careless. A target surrounded by political figures demanded stealth, whereas an enemy general on the battlefield could be eliminated more aggressively. Every mission had unique variables, but those variables meant nothing if they weren't accounted for before execution. Which was why scouting wasn't just a task, it was a mandatory step in mission planning. An assassin who scouted properly entered every battle already holding the advantage. And an assassin who didn't walked into the unknown, blind, and vulnerable. The next part was to verify the information they had obtained and ensure that they were not being purposefully deceived by the enemy through misinformation or planted intel. This was the stage where an assassin had to question everything they saw, every bit of intelligence they gathered, and every assumption they made, because the smallest overlooked detail could turn a perfect plan into a disaster. What if the guards they had been tracking were only decoys, meant to mislead intruders? What if the secret passage they uncovered was, in fact, a trap designed to funnel intruders into an ambush? What if the unguarded window was left open deliberately, to lure them into a kill zone? A skilled enemy knew that assassins and scouts relied on information. The smartest ones used that against them. Because of this, verification was a non-negotiable step. An assassin had to cross-check everything. Observe a target's behavior on different days, at different times. Note variations in security routines, not just on regular days but also on high-alert situations. If an opportunity seemed too easy, it probably was a trap. And hence the class was given a simple phrase to memorize. Misinformation is deadlier than ignorance. Because an assassin who went into a mission without information had a chance. But an assassin who went in with false information was already dead. Once information had been gathered and verified, the final step was creating a plan. However, a good plan was never just one plan. The lieutenant stressed that having a single strategy was a rookie mistake. An assassin needed to operate with at least 3 plans at all times. 1. The primary plan, the optimal, cleanest method of execution. If everything went as expected, this was the plan that would be followed. 2. The contingency plan, a backup method that accounted for unexpected variables. If a guard patrol changed, if a security system was upgraded, or if the target moved unexpectedly, the assassin needed a second option ready to be deployed. 3. The escape plan. No matter how well planned a mission was, extraction was just as important as execution. If an assassin eliminated a target but was caught or killed during escape, the mission was a failure. A proper plan included multiple exit routes, disguises, or diversions. There was no such thing as a perfect mission. There were only well-prepared assassins. As the lecture concluded, most of the cadets sat up, paying full attention. Despite their exhaustion, they understood the weight of what was being taught. This wasn't just textbook theory. It was knowledge forged from real missions. Real deaths. Real failures. And Leo appreciated it too. Having an escape route planned beforehand and being cautious was probably a smart strategy that his arrogant ass needed to learn. As just like the lieutenant said, there was no perfectly executed missions, just prepared assassins that had thought about every possibility that could unfold. Hence, by the end, Leo stood up thoroughly satisfied with what he had learnt for the day, as he hauled his tired rear to the mess hall for dinner, with a grumbling Mew Ryan by his side. "Oh my God, Leo, everything hurts," she complained, as she clutched her head. "My head hurts, my body hurts, my butt hurts. I don't even know how a butt can hurt, but mine hurts after all these long hours of sitting. And it's only the first day. The hellish Professor Marvin expects us to come in early tomorrow and run more laps as penalty for failing his expectations today, and this hell will just continue all over again tomorrow morning. And this is all if I retire to bed now, but I can't. I still have to spend a few hours meditating, then I have to work on the scroll given in the Basics of Perception class and also prepare for the next lecture of Professor David by studying his lecture notes today. I then have to introspect my combat performance like Major Hen wanted, and I have to sleep and recover my tired body too. It's like there's not enough hours on the clock for me to do all that and still remain sane, because I'm going to either fail one of the courses, or I'm going to go insane," Ryan complained as she stomped her feet in frustration like a spoiled baby. It's not all that bad, you can grab a couple extra stamina potions during dinner, it will help you stay awake longer, Leo comforted, as although he too felt like the academy life here was a lot more grueling than he expected, he was somehow fine with it. Deep down, he understood that getting stronger was not supposed to be an easy process, because if it were then every bum in the universe would be naturally powerful. Becoming strong was hard, and required sacrifice, which was why the strong were universally respected, as not everyone could become what they were. Chatter. Chatter. As Leo entered the mess hall for dinner, he found the place entirely full with hardly any seats left. However, to his surprise, the corner table which he usually sat at had a few empty seats left with Su Yang and Mu Shen sitting together on it, looking like they were saving it for him. As he walked in, Mu Shen immediately waved towards him to grab his attention, as Leo chuckled at this unexpected development. He had not expected to make allies in the academy, at least, not this quickly. But now, it looked like he was going to be in a power block with the two best students in the class. As Leo and Mu Ryan took their seats after filling their plates, the atmosphere at the table turned unexpectedly tense. The three strongest cadets in the elite class, Leo, Su Yang, and Mu Shen, sat in silence, locking eyes in an unspoken battle of wills. The rest of the mess hall immediately took notice. Whispers spread like wildfire, speculating on what it meant that the strongest students had aligned themselves together. "Man, my shoulders hurt," Mu Shen finally broke the silence, rotating his shoulder blades with a wince. "Punched a damn shield with my bare fists today. My knuckles are fine, but my shoulder feels like it's falling apart. What a drag." Su Yang scoffed, running a hand over the thin cut on his cheek. "TCH. I can't believe I let some bastard land a hit on me." His fingers traced the wound with irritation. "Little shit spat poison mist in my eyes. Blinded me for just a second, and that was enough." Mu Shen smirked. "Damn, even you got caught slipping." Su Yang's jaw clenched. "Next time, I'm breaking his ribs." "No, screw that. I'm shattering them." His tone was casual, but Leo could tell he meant every word. "What about you, Skyshard? How'd you get the black eye?" Mu Shen asked, finally turning to Leo. Leo only chuckled, casually pointing toward Su Yang. Mu Shen blinked. "Him." Su Yang frowned. "It's nothing. It wasn't a fair fight. I cheap-shotted Skyshard this time. But I've got a feeling that next time, it won't be the same." Leo's grin widened at that response. Su Yang could have bragged. He could have rubbed in the fact that he had beaten Leo black and blue that morning. But he didn't. Instead, he chose not to consider that fight as legitimate, because Leo had been without his memories. That small gesture earned Su Yang some respect in Leo's book. As for all his arrogance, it seemed like Su Yang still had his own sense of honor. Well, Mu Shen mused, alternating his gaze between the two of them. "Now that's a fight I really want to see." He turned back to his food, but the conversation was far from over. "The fight between the three of you is going to change every week," Mu Ryan added, chewing thoughtfully. "Depends on how your genetic awakening goes and what skills you unlock." Leo's ears perked up at that. "When does that happen? We got tested for our genetic potential, but when do we start awakening it?" Before Mu Ryan could answer, Su Yang spoke first. "Next week. You get your first shot this Sunday. Depending on how fast you digest it, you will get another shot every subsequent week, or once you've fully absorbed the previous dose. Whichever takes longer." He took a sip of water before continuing. "Commoners only get one full dose genetic awakening, which is far less effective." Su Yang glanced at Leo, knowing he might lack the full context. So he took the time to break it down. "Through extensive research, we've found that the best way to maximize the genetic awakening serum's effects is to take it in small, controlled doses over a year, while coupling it with intense physical training. The more you train, the faster you digest the serum, and the better your results." He glanced around the mess hall, his expression darkening. "The whiners in our class bitching about the academy's hellish training don't get it. They don't realize this training is the only way to draw out the maximum potential in our genes. He leaned back in his seat and met Leo's gaze. So if, at any point, you feel like the academy isn't pushing you to your limits, start training more on your own, Skyshard. Because it's going to be more important than you think. Leo nodded in understanding. He didn't need to be convinced to push his limits. Becoming strong was his obsession. With or without his memories, he knew that he wanted to become as strong as he physically could, and would do anything to get to that limit. No matter how much sacrifice and hard work he needed to get there. Also, don't forget, Mu Shen added, the higher your genetic potential, the greater your chances of experiencing ghost sleep. The moment the words left his mouth, Su Yang visibly tensed. A subtle, involuntary tremor ran through his fingers. And Leo caught the reaction immediately. Ghost sleep? Leo asked, curious. What's that? Mu Shen turned to him with a weird look. You don't know. He let out a laugh. Skyshard, how can you not know ghost sleep? Your father or mother must have told you about it countless times growing up. Leo didn't react, only blinking at him in confusion. Mu Shen kept laughing. Hell, it's practically all the old geezers in our families ever talk about. But when Leo still didn't respond, the laughter slowly died. And Su Yang took over. Ghost sleep is when you tap into the memories of your ancestors, Skyshard. He said it plainly, but there was something grim in his voice. It happens after you take the genetic awakening serum. You don't know exactly when it will happen, but occasionally after you take the serum, you will find yourself slipping into a state called ghost sleep, at night, where you start witnessing past events from your bloodline. Events that left a deep imprint on its history. Su Yang's gaze darkened. These memories are almost always tied to extreme emotions, either immense joy or overwhelming hatred. He exhaled sharply before adding, but in the history of the 6 great clans, I've never heard of a ghost sleep filled with joy. Not even once. Leo didn't speak, letting him continue. For us, it's always something brutal. A gruesome assassination, a massacre, or worse. Su Yang's fingers clenched against the table. Watching your entire family being raped and slaughtered before your eyes. A heavy silence fell over the table. Leo didn't move, didn't react outwardly, but he absorbed every word. The likelihood of experiencing ghost sleep depends on how much of the progenitor god's blood runs in your veins, Su Yang continued. The weaker your divine blood, the less frequently it happens. He met Leo's gaze. But if you have thick blood, like we do, it's unavoidable, he said, as he paused. We're bound to experience it, maybe once or twice a month, he said, concluding his speech, as he trembled once again. Leo finally noticed it. Both Mu Shen and Su Yang, 2 of the strongest cadets in the class, looked physically afraid of ghost sleep, as both of them had goosebumps just thinking about it. These 2 men, who did not flinch at the sight of blood or physical pain, trembled at the thought of these nightmares, which just went to prove how horrible they must be. Ghost sleep. Leo had no memories of it. But if these 2, as powerful as they were, feared it to this extent, then whatever it was, whatever they were destined to see in his dreams, was surely going to be hell. Gosh, let's not talk about these depressing topics, it's literally killing my appetite, guys. Mu Ryan said, trying to pull back the conversation to a more cheerful note, as the boys unanimously agreed to her suggestion. After dinner, Leo returned straight to his room, his mind set on a single goal, starting his meditation practice. Now that he had regained his knowledge of how to circulate mana within his body, Leo was eager to dive into meditation. He understood that it was one of the most crucial aspects of a warrior's path and a key to unlocking the next stage of his power. Before dinner today, he had no idea as to how important meditation was versus learning new skills. However, after listening to Mu Shen and Su Yang talk about their plans for the rest of the day after dinner, Leo got a pretty good idea about its importance. Mu Shen and Su Yang mentioned over dinner that they intended to meditate until midnight, followed by an hour dedicated to learning the perception skill scroll they'd been given earlier. And only then would they call it a night. It was currently 7 p.m., meaning that the 2 of them planned to spend at least 5 hours meditating versus only 1 to learn a new skill. Which was an eye-opener for Leo. Having friends, or at least, fellow cadets with more general knowledge in the academy, gave Leo some much-needed context about how he should manage his time, which came as a significant relief considering how clueless he felt without his memories. Hence, after returning to his dorm, the first thing that Leo did was to grab his holographic copy of the meditation manual, sitting cross-legged on the floor, before diving right in. Please condense a ball of mana in the center of your left palm. The manual instructed, as it began floating automatically into the air, hovering right before Leo's eyes, with the text written within beginning to glow with a faint light. "Oh, okay," Leo muttered, feeling surprised, as he did as instructed and condensed a ball of mana in the center of his left palm. "Insufficient mana density detected, please pack more mana into the current ball." The text inside the book shifted, as it seemed to track Leo's progress in real time. "Oh, a live book. That's interesting," Leo mused, as he condensed even more mana into the same spot, until the insufficient mana density warning dispersed, shifting into an anatomical diagram of his body and the mana circuits within his body. "Please circulate the condensed ball of mana exactly as displayed in the path in front of you." The book instructed, as it showed the exact path Leo was meant to follow, whereby he would circulate the ball of mana from his left palm up to his heart, and then down towards his navel, where the diagram wanted him to stop. As a whole, it looked simple, however, in reality it was anything but simple. The road map of the mana circuits in his body looked exactly like the map of the various nerves distributed in his body, or the circulatory system that delivered blood and nutrients to every cell. There were millions of small mana pathways fracturing into individual cell blocks within his body, which eventually merged to form a larger mana path, and eventually several of these small pathways merged to form a proper major mana pathway that Leo usually used to activate skills. Hence, to move a large block of mana along a specific micro-mana pathway within his body was easier said than done, as at every slight mistake, the text before his eyes turned from blue to red, reading, "Wrong path taken, please retrace all steps." Overall, it was an extremely tedious and time-consuming process to just transport a concentrated mana ball from his left palm to navel, and it took Leo a good 20 minutes of focusing his full attention to it, to do it correctly once. Please break the single large ball of mana into 2 equal parts, and control both balls of mana to reach the femur bone of your body as shown in the diagram. The book instructed, as the simulation it displayed now changed to showing how Leo must split the single mana ball into 2 and then control it down a specific pathway to reach both the femur bones of his body. "The hell?" he cursed, as he understood that the difficulty of this step of the meditation process was twice as hard as the first one. As although the distance was shorter, controlling 2 balls of mana at once was significantly more difficult than controlling just one. However, with no other options, Leo began focusing on doing it correctly, however, always messed it up somehow, as he remained impossibly stuck on this step for the next full hour. Pant. By the 1.5 hour mark into starting his meditation, Leo found his brain throbbing in overexertion and pain, as he quickly approached his limits. He had been using all his brain capacity non-stop for the past 90 minutes, focusing on an incredibly narrow and tedious process, and it took a significant toll on his mental health. "Fuck it, I need a break," he said, as he dispersed both balls of mana and laid back on his back, closing his eyes, as the glowing meditation manual dimmed and lowered to the ground automatically. Throb. Every vein in his brain hurt from the overexertion, as even with his eyes closed he could see the mana diagram floating before his eyes, asking him to guide it correctly again. "Meditation sucks. I would rather run 100 laps twice a day than do this shit," Leo cursed, as he realized that meditation was a much harder process to undergo rather than physical training. However, while he cursed verbally, internally he did not feel frustrated at all. If anything, he was excited, as he had never felt his brain challenged to such limits before. If meditation is this tough, and I do it daily, my brain is going to improve by leaps and bounds in the days to come. It's like exercise, but for my brain, and I'm sure the benefits it will bring will be massive, Leo thought, as he let a soft grin spread on his face. Deep breaths. Inhaling and exhaling sharply, he waited until the throbbing sensation in his brain subsided before slowly getting back to his meditation position again with the crossed legs. Then, he opened the meditation manual again, which immediately floated back into the air, asking him to form a concentrated ball of mana in his left palm. This time, Leo got it right on the first try, before quickly guiding it to his navel in just 5 minutes, as he then proceeded to split them into equal parts as guided. Then, he once again found himself trying to guide both balls down towards his femur bone as instructed, which he began doing unsuccessfully for about half an hour, until he finally got the path memorized just right to precisely guide both balls down at a simultaneous pace, succeeding with this step of the training. Using the mana balls as a power core, charge up all the 121,776 micro-mana pathways leading to your bone marrow, to begin the production of new blood cells. The manual instructed, as reading that text, Leo let out a sharp breath of disbelief. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.